Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the CEC 20's business meeting. Thank you for joining us. Before the meeting starts, I want to remind everyone this is a public meeting and it is being recorded. The only people who should share their cameras are the superintendent, CEC members, and our guests. Very importantly, I want to announce that there are Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin interpreters here tonight working on separate lines. You should see video of these interpreters. Thank you to them for being here with us and providing this important service to our Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin speaking families. They will now announce instructions for attendees who may wish to dial into the lines at this time. You should also see the dial-in information on your screen if you are logged into the Zoom meeting. So first, I would just like our Spanish interpreters to introduce themselves and give their instructions.
Y buenas tardes. Por favor, marque al 1-347-966-4114 y ponga el número PIN de conferencia 202-866-949, número de gato. De nuevo, el número es 347-966-4114 y el número de PIN es 202-866-949, número de gato. Si desea escuchar el audio en español pero quiere quedarse en la conferencia, puede hacer eso en su computadora. Por favor, póngase en mute en su computadora y mute en el volumen. Y de nuevo, para la conferencia en español es 347-966-4114, número de PIN 202-866-949, número de gato.
Gracias. And now would our Arabic interpreters please introduce themselves and give their instructions?
Yeah, hi, it's the Arabic announcement. مساء الخير، اسمي عماد، معاكم مترجم اللغة العربية. هنستسمحكم اللي حابب يشترك معانا بأن هو يسمع الترجمة اللغة العربية في رقم تليفون هيطلبه وبعدين في رمز هيطلبه. رقم التليفون هنقوله مرتين والرمز هنقوله مرتين. رقم التليفون اللي هنتصل عليه عشان نسمع الترجمة اللغة العربية 347-966-4114. الرقم هنقوله مرة كمان 347-966-4114 والرمز اللي هنطلبه 894-631-034. هنقول الرمز تاني وبعد كده شباك. هنقول الرمز تاني 894-631-034 وبعدين شباك. ونستسمحكم الغوا صوت السماعة من الكمبيوتر أو الآلة أو الجهاز اللي بتسمعونا منه واسمعونا من التليفون. شكرا. Thank you.
Shukran. And may I have our Mandarin interpreters please introduce themselves? You need to unmute yourself.
OK， 各位与会的贵宾跟家长，大家好。我这边是普通话的翻译。如果你需要的话，请先打1-347-966-4111，然后再打入这个这次会议的 ID 号码是466-712-420井字号。我再重述一遍。电话号码是1-347-966-4112，然后还要再打入这个密码，就是所谓这个这个会议的 ID 号码466-712-420，再按一个井字号。如果你想听有关普通话的这个即时翻译的话，请等于说就在这个线上然后你可以看到这个会议里面，在你的所谓的电脑之前，同时就是要关掉你电脑上的静音，然后 静音你那个声音的话，在你的电脑上面，同时你可以打你的电话号码在这个专线上，直接听同步的语音翻译，就是普通话的。再一次讲，你的普通话的这个视线的电话号码是13479664114。再一次的等于说打入你这个密码，等于说会议的 ID 号码是再一次重复466712420，请字号。OK， 谢谢你。OK，Thank you，That's it。
谢谢。Now we can move to the old business portion of the meeting.
We have
We'd
to
like-
call to order, Steve.
Call to order.
And do, what's that thing called?
Roll call.
Call it, that's it, roll call.
I'd now like to call the meeting to order.
Okay. And I will do the roll call. Hello,
Please,
everyone.
that'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Stephen Stowe, President.
Present.
Dina Gergis, First Vice President. Here. Robert Aguilar, Second Vice President. Robert, you here yet? Okay, he was commuting, so he's on his way. Alice Licato, Recording Secretary, present. Inga Smolyar, Treasurer.
Here.
Alan Aja, IEP.
Here.
Tech. Thank you.
Here.
Mauricia Cadillo. Hi. Yifeng Chen.
Here.
Hi. Yifeng Chen.
Here.
Vito Labella. Vito. I know Vito's here. Simeon Stoltzberg.
Here.
Vito, can I get a present? He's in the room, yeah?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay, hi, okay.
Technical difficulties.
Present, okay, we'll just look out. Oh, and Adele Doyle, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Alice.
I
Thank you.
see you, I see
Thank
you.
you. Here.
Great, and just look out for Robert. He's here, I'm sure, or coming. Thank you, everyone.
Now we can get to old business, right?
Mhm.
Approval of the business meeting minutes from last month. Natalia, could you pull those up, please? Natalia, can you hear me?
She's probably just still on mute.
Natalia, you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, I just had to switch screen from the agenda to the minutes.
Okay, so everyone should have had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any members that would like to comment on the minutes or make any changes?
Looks okay to me. I
Okay.
motion to approve.
And we officially don't need a motion on minutes according to the laws, but if everyone's okay, the minutes are approved as is.
Yep, seconded.
Okay. So next order of business, we are going to get an update. Adele is going to share an update on the work she's been doing to create an arts showcase for students of the district. So Adele, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve. Very efficiently. So I've met twice now with the superintendent, first the superintendent and Steve a week ago. And then this week we met with the the Arts Festival committee from the principals involved in the Arts Festival in traditionally speaking, and see if we can work together on a collaboration, taking into account that it's virtual and that we don't necessarily want to sit through a 2-hour presentation of videos. I thought of the idea for a website, which would be an inclusive event, which would invite students across the district to submit work on in various modalities of the arts, visual and performing arts. I met with Diane Gennardis was there today, and a couple of other principals. I named them all, but Steve said be quick. And we were working out the parameters of that. We would host the website. I wanted to go through Wix. I'm still going to debate going through Wix because it's cheaper. We would host the website for at least 4 months. It's $25 a month right now if I act now within the next 16 hours. I already started creating a website. And for me, the idea is to create an inclusive event where students can showcase whether they are at home learning or if they are in school, whether it's groups or whether it's individuals across from pre-K to 8, that they would have a place to present their art. And if anybody would like to give feedback or ask specific questions, it's a little more complicated than all of that, but we're working out the details. We have our next meeting set up for the 24th of February, and council members, you're welcome to come if you would like to participate. Otherwise, that's our plan is to launch it in March, collect art and arts presentations through April, and I will develop the website, and we would launch it at our meeting as something, something filled with joy, hopefully. So I'll take questions from anybody on our council who might have any considerations.
Is Wix a DOE vendor?
No, not.
Oh, that won't, it won't work.
No, so I could get reimbursed for it. And I was,
okay, double.
I know.
Quadruple check that, Adele, because you're not gonna.
I remember.
In a second, okay?
I know. So I started creating it on Wix, Alice, before I recognized that they only like eChalk, and I don't like eChalk because it's very utilitarian, and I'm looking for something a little more creative.
But would eChalk maybe have more access for principals if they wanted to directly upload?
Well, we wouldn't have a direct upload. This is definitely going to be a CEC event. Okay. However, we will have a Google Drive where each school will be able to upload their work to that Google Drive. Okay. So and this way we can pull it from there.
Right, March, April, May, and June, right?
That's so, yeah, I'm thinking we have, and this is one of those, you cut right to it, Alice. If we host it for 4 months, if we host it for 4 months, then you have, well, what happens afterwards, right? And is this a short-term, long-term commitment on our part? My only concern about not hosting it after that is sometimes these websites get taken over by different entities. Like they'll just acquire.
Yeah, not hosting it because we're going to be a new council, and then
yes.
If all the principals have their stuff from Drive anyway, they will have access to it.
They'll have access, and we can dismantle it. Yeah, and I'm fine with that because obviously I have no intention of doing anything after June. I don't mean that in any way other than.
No, you're not going to be a member, so no,
right.
So you shouldn't.
Okay. So, but short term, I think it's a win-win if we do it right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's remember that there is a deadline for reimbursements.
Oh,
and that's my concern with that is if we do until June.
So is Steve here, Steve Weezer? I was going to ask, I know I wanted to double check that there were no other websites available. And I did get that bad news today from Natalia, so I haven't been able to look into eChalk. If I have to bite the bullet, I will transfer over to eChalk. It's just, I'm wondering how much it's costing to do eChalk. $25 a month for Wix is, doable for 4 months. But you're right, Alice. I remember that whole fiasco of us, not getting reimbursed.
I mean, the worst comes to worst, you donate $200.
Donate, yes, and yeah, as long as somebody.
Guido, though, you are the expert on YouTube. Is YouTube maybe an option too? Like
I would love to speak on this. I'm not necessarily an expert, but I do have experience. I just did a great presentation at Brooklyn Tech. It was fabulous. It's called Premiere. So we had a pre-recorded performance and we premiered it so that at 6 p.m. on Friday, it went live and everyone could watch it at the same time. It was a great way to communicate. You couldn't fast forward through it. I mean, you could stop it and you could rewind it like it was TV, but you can't fast forward. And it was a great experience for everybody. And then you could go after the performance, you could go to a Zoom presentation, and you could live stream it to YouTube, and you could do like a follow-ups. We did like a post-show party after the event, and it was very well received. We had over 1,800 views. We're very, very happy with it. I'd be so happy to be involved and help out with that in any way I could.
So we could create a link. We could create a link to YouTube. The problem is we have the potential for having hundreds of submissions. So it's a matter of, and the reason why we needed the unlimited from Wix, it gives you unlimited video. I'm not sure what eChalk is going to limit our video upload to, and then it becomes a little more complicated. So I don't want to exclude, people because we didn't have the room for them.
Adele,
yeah.
Is this a pre-recorded presentation in your mind?
Well, it's not a presentation. This is a website, and it will have vignettes, little video, no more than 3 minutes or 4. We're debating which one it is, if they're musical presentations.
So my question is, would you want to put all the vignettes together to make like one big thing and then just go live at one specific time?
Well, we could do that separately attached to the site, but I was thinking of it something that could be browsed, where you would have, pre-K through 2nd grade, Diane was suggesting, then 3rd through 5th and 6th through 8th, and you would have literally pages devoted to each of those. And on top of that, you could have a mashup attached to that. So, again, I was concerned with limiting, I didn't want to limit the possibilities for students. And I know it puts more work on me in particular, but I know the principals and I were talking today, and they were suggesting that we limit per school or per grade or per something. Again, in these times, it's obviously
our show from Brooklyn Tech was 2 hours and 48 minutes. And I tell you, people watched it from beginning to end. So, we just certainly don't have to go 3 hours, but we could certainly take all of the acts and present it on on May 15th
we
at
can
9
do
o'clock.
a mashup. Definitely do a mashup, and we could attach it like on each page. Like if we wanted to do a musical mashup or a slideshow, a
We could
montage.
group them, yep, sure.
Yeah, we can group them. But again, like I said, I'd like the repository so kids, and also it would include testimonials from teachers and invite teachers. I forgot this part. Invite teachers to present their own artwork and why they became art teachers, arts to visual and performing. And also from students, what it is about art that motivates them and inspires them. So, it would have all different little things going on there.
What time is the meeting on the 24th that you're the next
1 o'clock.
meeting?
1
1 o'clock.
Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's the
Maybe.
Wednesday we get back.
I think Vito wants to come for sure.
If you send me an invite, I will come.
Okay, I'll tell Sylvia.
We'll send it
But-
to Natalia, and then maybe she
You
can.
You know what? I can send it to you all, and
Thank
anyone
you.
who wants to. Everybody is welcome, of course. It's yeah. I think it could.
Natalia, we do have a YouTube now? Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we need 100 subscribers. Do we have 100 subscribers? We need to kind of push that out and get 100 subscribers.
That I don't think we have.
I'm looking it up right
So
now.
we got to try to really push that out, and then we could have a vanity URL. And then also, I think you need to have 100 subscribers to do a live thing or presentation.
We can attach a link to the website as well for YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and everything else that we might possibly have. We can put it on each page. And I could show you all, I'll show you whatever website I land on, I could show you what I developed and at the next meeting, but obviously not time here.
Natalia, do you have, right now at the bottom of your screen, you're the original host. Do you have the ability to stream to YouTube?
Vito,
That's
if you
Steve.
don't mind, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, Vito, but if you don't mind, do you mind if we move on and maybe?
Oh, I apologize. I was asked the question, Steve.
Okay. No worries,
Thanks for the input, everyone.
but it's,
So just FYI, the CC YouTube channel has 1 subscriber, and that's me. I just subscribed.
Okay, so Steve Stowe, president.
Here.
Ina Gurgis, first vice president. Here. Robert Aguilar, second vice
is that on
president.
yours?
Here.
Oh, sorry, I'm muting.
Okay. Okay. I just want to say can everyone, okay. Adele, I really thank you for taking this on too, by the way, and sort of showing the initiative on it. And it's, I think it's a great project. On the next item of business on the agenda is the CEC's budget. And Yevgeny, Inga, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Take it
Hopefully
away.
my name is showing correctly. So I think we had discussed the budget beforehand. Basically, I got an update on what we have remaining in our budget. Currently, as it stands, we have $20,814 that we can use to spend. Thank you. And what that can be used for, based on responses from DOE, is a website registration fee. We can use it for laptops for members, and we can use it to pay for guest speakers, right? But again, with guest speakers, you have to go through DOE for vendor approvals. We cannot use it for charity at this point in time. The DOE still hasn't announced if they're going to make any exceptions this year like they did last year. So as of now, we cannot use it for any kind of charity funding. And for like consultant services for like web designs or parent surveys, we also are not allowed to use the funds. So I just wanted to get through that. I think, in the past we've discussed using some of these funds for items and voting on, transferring some monies from our line items. I think as we see members have funds to use, which we can transfer and allocate to other line items if we so wish to do. So I think, this is a good opportunity to see if anyone has any thoughts or would like to use any of these funds for anything. Okay.
What is the objection to using it for surveys? I mean, we have a website, so that's just for paying for a host, but we can't pay for a consultant to help develop the site?
Yeah, apparently that's the case. I don't know the detail of it. The question was asked and they basically said we cannot pay for consultants. I don't know, Steve, if you have any more color to add there, but that
I
was my
don't.
understanding.
The email was pretty straightforward. We shared
Yeah.
that exact idea with them and they just came back. If there's, I guess we could try and get them to explain a little bit more and say if we wanted to do a survey and it involved, it clearly involves an essential purpose of the CEC.
There's a consultant word, and I don't know if that's part of the problem, but hiring a survey company is not a consultant. That would be hiring a service. And
yeah, and they said services broadly speaking, but
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love it if they give a rationale for that.
Sure.
Could I ask, Alice, did you have your hand up? Up, you're muted.
Me? No?
No, you good? Okay. So might I suggest that we move more money to family engagement at this point, considering that if we could do anything, we can do a lot of it under the auspices of family engagement, including surveys. If we wanted to accomplish surveys, I would think theoretically. Equipment, I don't know, at this point why we have that much money in equipment. I know by May, I think we lose, we can't move any more money. Is that true, Inga?
I think it was March.
March, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just feel like family engagements at $600. I wouldn't call it refreshment necessarily, but it's family engagement. We can do surveys potentially. Or
I don't know. It would still have to be submitted under whatever the vendor that provides it, I would think, but we can call it.
I think, and also just Adele, for the equipment line item, I recall we were discussing purchasing some laptops for future CEC members. I think in the environment we're in now, my personal opinion is, there will, even when everything becomes in person, I don't know really how in person everything will become. So this avenue of communication with the community may still remain. And I think, CEC should have some equipment that it can use for its members. and even at the meetings, to be perfectly frank.
So are
So
we talking about for now, or are we talking about for future CECs?
we're talking about for future CECs, but as everyone knows, we get this budget every year. It's kind of like a use it or lose it budget. If we don't use
Right.
these funds now, we lose them. And, you know, if we know that this will be approved, which we do know, they've confirmed, you know, in my opinion, I think we should, you know, spend that money to benefit, you know, the Community Education Council, even in the future.
Okay, so that's equipment. Is there anything that we can move into family engagements?
I'm
Alice,
fine
you muted, so-
moving, you can move president reimbursement. But I do, Adele, I do really want to make sure that we know, just by moving it, you know, this program category, it doesn't, I'm guessing it doesn't magically mean that everything we spend out of family engagement gets approved. That's my hunch. So I think we probably still have to ask them, hey, there's a service we want to spend money on. Can we do that?
Do we have an idea how much a laptop cost?
I feel like we looked back at that a couple months ago, and it was, I feel like the number for sort of a, I feel like $1,400 is in my head from something we looked at. And obviously there's a whole range of prices on these things, but.
Yeah, it was between 1,200 and 1,400.
So if we got 11, we would need 11, maybe 12 actually, right? So 12 laptops, that gives us what, 14,028 is 16,800. How much does that leave us with to do anything else we want?
5,000-6,000.
Yeah.
That's still a lot of money that even if we want to give away, if we set this up, and I think we should, I'm concurring with Inga, I think we should set this up going forward, that going forward, there's Zooming is the way to go, even when we're all in the same room with our laptops, right? Zooming out to the world. Then we still have, at the end of the year, if the DOE says, we can decide if we want to give away what the surplus is.
Do we
So-
want to, go ahead, Inga, sorry.
Yeah, I was probably going to ask the same question you were about to, which is, you know, should I motion to, you know, I guess purchase a few laptops? I don't know if I was gonna purchase 11 of them, suggest purchasing 11 of them, but I was thinking a couple for sure.
Well, shouldn't we have one for each member?
I mean, I think that's the ideal situation, but also I do have to say, if there are other ideas for how we can use these funds, right, we could discuss that as well. If really there's no other way to use the funds, then, you know, we should use them. And then we can use them for all the members.
Yeah, I would just hate to lose the money, right? Because we're doing this with our school budgets as
Yeah.
well, right? Our principals are all trying to spend this money before the city claws it back.
Can you guys hear me? Ah.
Oh, now we can. We could not hear you before.
Okay, hello, can you hear me? Is it good?
Yes.
still? Okay, oh, thank goodness. I don't know what was wrong. So what about that survey that went out? Did everyone see that? Because I get the feeling that they sent that out to parent leaders about what we wanted to happen to CEC budgets. And I'm unclear if that survey was meant for the entire council, like they wanted 32 surveys back, or they wanted to hear from every parent leader specifically. And if it is every parent leader, then I have a feeling that they're going to do the same thing they did last year and allow us to donate the money to students in temporary housing, because there were open-ended questions about what we wanted to do. But, you know, yes, I think if we're going to lose the money and we can't do that, then, you know, laptops are an idea, keeping in mind we're going to have to return them on June 30th. So maybe it's just something we should buy and the next council should get. I don't even know if it's worth the work. And by the
I'm
time
fine
we
with
get
that.
them, get them, it's going to be like May 30th or something. But
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's something that goes forward is fine.
I have a strong feeling, though, because of the survey, that they are going to let us donate to students in temporary housing again, or else why would they be asking our input? I don't know how to get real answers on that, though.
Yeah,
First, we need to know if they want.
And when, I mean, the survey, Alice, I read the survey and it's one response per council. which is fine. And I have to do it by 11 o'clock tonight, by the way.
No,
so
I
we
know,
gotta
I
do-
saw that it was the 10th, and Steve,
Yeah.
can we get some clarity? Is it really one response per council? Because they
Yes,
send it
the
to everyone.
president, it explicitly says, if you read it on there, it says the president must submit it by 11 o'clock on February 10th.
Okay,
So,
so should we talk about what we wanted to say then?
Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
will. First, I want to touch on Inga's sort of, my whole thing with the survey is we just don't know what's going to come out of it, right? I mean, your hunch may be correct, Alice, but it's almost March, and my opinion is we should try and use our money as we see fit. And if we're able to give away the surplus, that's great. We don't know just now, right?
No, I totally agree. We'd have to move the money over by March, first of all, to figure out what we want to do. But I mean, I assume pricing 11 laptops is quite the job.
And I don't need a laptop, by the way. And I don't know if we want to go
It's
around.
not for you, Steve.
with
It's for the
councils.
council.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if we do want to. All right. Anyway, I mean, I guess that's something we should make a motion on then. And
Actually, just to jump it, Natalia just got a laptop. I ordered one for her before I left. Natalia, how much was that, your laptop?
It was like $4,000, no?
No, a laptop?
No, it was about 1,200.
It was 1,200?
It was 4,000 with that copier then. That was what was.
The printer, which we, of course, we didn't get because we're not in the office.
All right, I'm way out of it. DOE pricing kills me.
Right. So even if
Yeah, and I think
laptop at $1,200, we'd still have excess money.
And here's a
yes,
question. And
yes.
why don't
Yeah,
we
I get the
just
laptops.
why don't we just transfer money now to the equipment account, make a motion to transfer what we can to the equipment account. And then we can, pricing and everything can be worked out later. I know there's one chat here to me that says there's a place we can go to get good laptops for under $1,000. So I think that can be worked out.
Are they DOE vendors though, Steve?
If
I don't
it's
know,
going to be for the CEC, it has to be through Shop DOE.
That's what was texted. That was chatted to me. So
Mhm.
anyway, why don't we just make a motion on moving the money that we don't need into equipment, because equipment is where laptops would come from. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
Okay. I mean, I'll make a motion to move the funds to equipment, and I'm just looking, we have 4,000 there currently. So if we're doing 11 laptops times 12, can someone do times 1,200, which I cannot do? I guess it's around $12,000. I mean, should we move like $8,000 or $9,000 into that line item?
From where? From member reimbursement?
So we can't move.
Um,
more than-
I can't move that, right?
Well, we just can't move February, March, April, May, June. We can move whatever of that 12,000 is available. You know what I mean?
The Wi-Fi reimbursement,
Mhm.
how does that go? Did anybody put in for that?
You just submit. You just.
And
put
how
in
much, how
your
much are we submitting for? What it was
Up
there?
to 75, but it's supposed to be based on the increase. So whatever you needed to upgrade to, because you have to participate in CEC meetings. And also it's supposed to be sort of prorated on how much you participate and use it. But I mean, 75 is the cap. I don't think they're going to chase anyone for it later. And you don't even need to put a receipt in.
75 total or
Every month.
every month?
A month.
So look, for member reimbursement, as of today, we have available $10,814. That's what's available. For presidents, we have 2,400 available, right? Then we have, I guess, this for freshman family engagement, we have 600. We basically haven't used that. And then the P card, I guess, has been used, so we have nothing left there. So if we move the 2,400 from the present reimbursement, which I guess, Steve, you said you would be fine with,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And then we need to move the funds from the member reimbursements line item where we have 10,814. So I mean, I am fine with moving my full allocation. I guess the question is, how many other members would be okay with moving their allocation, and then we can do a tally of how much we'd have available to move.
Yeah,
So-
I have no problem. Should we just take a roll call vote? Or is that embarrassing?
No, we should not take a roll call vote, but let's also just keep it, because I think it is embarrassing for people who want to use it or whatever.
Okay, yeah,
That's my opinion.
that's fine.
But we only have, so just so we can, $6,875 of that 12,000 is the amount that could potentially be used by members in the next 5 months. So I hate to be like, whatever, but it's more like we have $4,000 easily available from that member reimbursement line that we could
I'm
move.
sorry, Alice, how did you do that math? Because I asked the
Because I get
DOE to
11
talk.
members times $125 times 5 months, which is February, March, April, May, and June. That is the potential amount of reimbursement that could happen.
Well, the DOE provided to me what we have available right
Right.
now on
Yeah.
that line item.
Right. And so what I'm saying though, so 12,000 is the amount for the entire year, Inga. It's 11 members times $125 times 12 months. Of
Right.
that 12,000, 1186 has been used, but 6875 or whatever number I just said is the amount that could potentially still be submitted by members.
But if we're all agreeing to waive that,
Well, are we though in
that's what
public and
we're trying to
making
do.
a statement?
Well, I think we need to determine that. So that's why, I mean, maybe, if we think it's sensitive, I think this has to be a public, it's a public meeting. This is not the type of information we would, or maybe it is. Is this something we call executive session for?
I have one, Steve Weezer is on and he has messaged me and would like to speak about this. So Natalia, can you unmute Steve?
I'm good. I can unmute.
Oh, awesome.
I just didn't want to jump in. Yeah, the thing is, even if someone on the call says they're not going to take their reimbursement, they're still entitled to their reimbursement until the end of the year. So it's hard to predict. Anything can happen over the next couple months, and maybe someone doesn't need it now. They will need it. So it's best to keep that money in place. Obviously, you have the reimbursements for the members that weren't on the council for a few months this year when there were vacancies. So that money could be moved. And then, if you wanted to proceed with someone giving up their reimbursement, you could, but it's just good to keep in mind that it could always be claimed in the future. And then you potentially could have a problem or a shortfall on a budget.
So what you're saying, Steve, is they can't waive their rights right now.
Yeah. So even if you say it, you're still entitled to that reimbursement as a member of the CEC.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess from my perspective, I will definitely not be using those monies. So I definitely want to move that into the equipment line item. Is that something that members can do?
Steve,
Can we pass a
just-
motion to
Council,
do
the
that?
council can vote to move it. I'm just saying, keep in mind that you could ask for it in the future, but yeah. So if you wanted to move it, you are in complete control of where you can allot things on the budget. It's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Steve,
Could
are
we-
you
could
saying
we-
that if we say, like, we move it all and suddenly we recognize, oh, wait a sec, I needed to be reimbursed, you can still be reimbursed even though the money's been moved out?
Yeah, you're entitled to that reimbursement.
So it
Correct.
doesn't matter if we move it out because we could always get it no matter where it is.
You'd have to, it becomes tricky to move it on a line after
Into March.
beginning of April. Yeah,
Right,
March, sorry.
the March deadline coming in here.
But yeah.
Um,
We maybe keep $1,000 in abeyance in that category.
I think that some people might want to use it though. And I honestly, I feel like we should only be addressing the months that have already gone by.
What was your number, Alice? What was the number?
I have to agree with Alice. I think
Alice, what was the number?
I think
you
we
had?
should follow her advice here.
Okay, the number again, so we're looking at $12,000 minus the money that was used already, which is 1186. That's 10,114, and then we have to subtract 125 times 11 members times 5 months, 6875 plus 1086, 7 9 12. Looks like we have $4,039 from months July through January that has not been claimed. And I think we can all say that we won't claim that maybe.
Well, Wi-Fi, I'm definitely going to put in for Wi-Fi. So I don't know how that goes back. So that, and then going forward, the Arts Festival, I don't know what kind of problems I'm running into.
Right. So I think this whole thing is very tricky, and I think that you know, maybe take $2,000 out. I don't know. I don't love the laptop.
So I'm just gonna, right, so I just want to speak for myself. I want to move my full amount to the equipment line item. And, you know, in my opinion, any council member that would like to do that should be able to do that. And, you know,
Yes, I concur. And that would be like, an unofficial agreement that we're not going to take the money, right? If something drastic were to happen, I think people would understand, right? If someone were to get laid off or something were to happen. But if we make an unofficial agreement now, we're all acting in good faith, right? So I agree with you. I'd be fine to do that as well.
right. I guess my question is, if something drastic happens and someone does file for the money won't be there because we will have spent it. How
Well,
does that work?
since it's required to give it to us, even if it's not there, they have to get it from another place.
They have to get it from somebody
yeah,
in the budget.
I guess I'm willing to take that risk, Alice. And yeah, so I don't know if we have to really continue like really discussing this point. I mean, I would like to make a motion to move an amount of funds to that equipment line item. So maybe I don't know if we need to start with just, you know, dollar by dollar, or if we can do a full amount. I guess the number you gave, Alice, was $4,395 or so.
No, it's $4,039.
$4,039 for past months.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you
No,
know, for the
right. That is what would be available for July and January that was not spent. Plus
exactly
$2,400.
Right.
Just
So-
supplies. Are there a reason why we're not moving supplies? Is there something in supplies that's absolutely imperative?
Yeah, I'd love to move supplies.
Good question.
Supplies, let's see. Do we have money left? No,
3,000.
yeah, we can move supplies. Let's move supplies. So that's 3,000.
I mean, even without touching the member reimbursement.
I would feel really uncomfortable moving the whole thing because if I do end up going back to the office, I might
But you
need
have
to
the P card has $1,000 on it.
No, the P
Yeah,
card
but
has
the P
been
card is not
used.
used for everything.
Oh, we used the whole P card. We used the whole
Yeah,
P-
we used.
Where is
yeah,
it?
it says.
No.
Well, I don't. It says there's nothing left in the P card
No,
based on
it
what the
says that
DOE said.
$1,000 is on the P card to be spent.
$1,000 is on the P card.
what's
Committed.
So
But it's
guys, I'm
okay.
actually,
Oh.
so Alice, sorry. I am actually looking at a different spreadsheet that was sent to me because I specifically asked them to tell me what is left in each of these line items as of now. And I'm looking at what they sent me, and the P card basically says remaining amount. There's a line item called, there's a column called remaining amount that they provided to me by line item, and the P card says 0.
Okay.
Because I don't know what it's used for. I didn't ask them to give me that information, but the P card says 0. But supplies is still remaining as of today, as of yesterday when they sent this information. And then, as I mentioned, right, the member reimbursement, the 10,814, based on the DOE data, that's what's left there. The 2,400 in the president's line item. Let me just go back to this. And then, yeah, we have the 2,400 remaining from president, and the refreshment family engagement, we have the 600 remaining.
So Natalia, how much would you feel comfortable sort of want to leave in the supplies line item?
Like, I'm fine with just leaving 1,000.
Okay.
Okay.
So why don't we do this? The motion to make a motion to move the president's money, the reimbursement money for the president, $4,000. That was roughly what you said the amount would be, Alice, right? From the member reimbursement?
Yeah, except I think at this point now we're moving more than we would need for the laptop. So I don't like.
I gotta tell.
Just do the math real
let's
quick.
do it.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, let's do the math. Yeah, let's do the math.
$3,000 from
So-
supplies. That is available. $2,000 from, oh, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. 3,000 plus 600 for the refreshments. We haven't spent that. That's 2,400 from the presidents. That's 3,000 plus the 3,000 supplies. That's 6,000. We already have 4,000 in the equipment. So it looks like we're only going to need like $2,000 from the member reimbursement.
Sure, that's
Yeah.
fine. Let's just make a
Yeah.
motion.
I'm
that-
not crazy about $1,200 laptops going to council members unless they're going back to the CEC
They
when the
are.
term-
They're
Yes,
all
they
with
have
the
to go
CEC.
back. Yes.
Yeah,
this
they're
is
not
all
ours
gonna
at all.
be
Yeah.
CEC property. This is gonna be
No.
CEC property. And I think even if we order them, they have to be delivered to like a school if we don't have access.
Actually,
to
no,
the
they can be
office.
delivered to Steve at this
Or
point.
to Steve, or to
Yeah.
Steve, that's fine. Okay, so let's just go through this one last time. From supplies, we're going to move only $2,000, right? Because Natalia wants 1,000 to be remaining. From refreshments, we're moving the full 600, right? From the presidents, we're gonna move the 2,400, right?
Yep.
So now that gets us to $5,000. We have 4,000 in equipment, that gets us to $9,000, right? And so we want to move 2,000 from member reimbursement, which will
Yes.
get us to $11,000 for equipment. Okay. So does anyone have any questions? I guess maybe before I make the motion to do this?
No, we're running out of time.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. I agree with the motion. Can I just make one little just clarification for the P card just going forward? I know exactly what you're saying, but the P card is like a prepaid card. So like a statement comes every month. So I think Natalia does have a balance. It's some amount of $1,000. Maybe she spent 2,000 of the 1,000. But the way the DOE looks at P card money is they like put it on it's like a prepaid card. It's weird. I remember getting statements when I was I wasn't trying to argue with you, Inga.
Got it. We got it, Alice.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Go ahead, motion.
Okay, so I'm gonna just make a motion to move $2,000 from the supplies line item to the equipment line item. To move the $2,400 from the president reimbursement line item to the equipment line item. To move $600 from the refreshment and engagement line item to the equipment line item, and to move $2,000 from the member reimbursement line item to the equipment line item. Basically causing the equipment final line item budget amount to be equal to $11,000.
Is there a
Anyone want to second that
Anyone
motion?
Second that motion.
I'll second it. Second.
And should we do a voice vote?
Yeah, that's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed?
Any opposed, I think.
No opposed? The motion passes. And with that, I think we are out of time. And so unless there's anything else pressing on the business item, we will postpone the other items on the business meeting agenda.
What, yeah, can we pull it up? Sorry,
On what? Pull up what, Alice?
I'm just looking at it. I don't know what the rest of it is.
Oh, we were going to talk about the social media policy and we were going to talk about the survey, parent survey, but that's fine. We can address
Well,
those.
can
at
we just
later.
talk about when the next social media subcommittee meeting is?
I'll let you know, but it's 7 o'clock right now and I want to
Okay,
move
I
to the
just, for the
calendar.
public as well, who's welcome to come to these meetings. it'd be-
Yeah, we had a wonderful couple that came, parents.
We always
the public.
publicize them. They always go out. We haven't said it yet, Alice, but it's always publicized. All right, so motion to adjourn the business meeting.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, and I'm just looking at, I'm just checking the chat real quick. Okay. All right, so it is now 7 o'clock and I would like to call the calendar meeting to order. Do I need a motion for that? I don't, right?
No.
Call to order, roll call, please. Recording secretary
Stephen Stowe, president.
here.
Dina Gerges, first vice president.
Here.
Robert Aguilar, second vice president and ELL rep.
Here.
Alice Licato, recording secretary, present. Inga Smoliar, Brooklyn Borough president appointee and treasurer.
Here.
Alan Aja, IEP rep.
Here.
Mauricia Cadillo,
Here.
Yifang Chen,
Here.
Adele Doyle,
Here.
Fido Labella,
Here.
and Simeon Stoltzberg, the other Brooklyn Borough president appointee.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Alice. My name is Steve Stowe. I'm the president of the Community Education Council for District 20. I will now read our protocols for the interpreters on this meeting. Before the meeting starts, I just want to remind everyone that this is a public meeting. It is being recorded. The only people who should share their cameras are the superintendent, the CEC members, and our guests. Very importantly, I also want to announce that there are Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin interpreters tonight working on separate lines. You should see video of these interpreters. Thank you very much to them for being here with us and providing this important service to our Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin speaking families. They will now announce instructions for attendees who wish to dial in to the lines at this time. You should also see the dial-in information on your screen if you are logged into the Zoom meeting. First, I would like to ask our Spanish interpreters to introduce themselves.
Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Cristian. Estoy con la señorita Paulina interpretando simultáneamente para ustedes. Por favor, llamen a la línea de teléfono 347-966-4114 y el número de identificación es el 202-866-949, símbolo numeral. Nuevamente, el número de teléfono es el 347-966-4114 y el número de identificación es el 202-866-949, símbolo numeral. Cualquier duda, de todas maneras, publicaremos la información en el chat de web para que ustedes puedan ver los números de teléfono. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Next, I would like to ask our Arabic interpreters to introduce themselves.
أهلا، مساء الخير. اسمي هايدي وهترجم لحضراتكم الليلة. واللي عايز يتصل على خطوط الترجمة please would you share the number on the screen?
Natalia, is that something you can share?
I would have to go through my notes to find it. But I think it should be still in the chat because they shared it earlier.
Okay.
This is the Spanish interpreter. It's on the chat, all the lines and phone numbers. She can use it there.
Great.
All right, I see on the chat, I see the Mandarin and the Spanish, and I don't see the Arabic.
Yeah, I don't see it either. Oh, there it is in Arabic.
Okay, thank you. أهلا بيكم. اللي حابب يستمع للترجمة باللغة العربية الليلة تقدروا حضراتكم تحضروا الاجتماع على الزوم، ولكن تقدروا تتصلوا عن طريق الهاتف على رقم التليفون وهو 347-966-4114، وبعدها عليكم إدخال الرقم الرمز اللي هو البين اللي لازم تدخلوه عشان تقدروا تسمعوا الترجمة 894-631-034 وبعديها علامة الشباك. رقم التليفون مرة أخرى للحصول على ترجمة باللغة العربية لاجتماع الليلة 347-966-4114 وبعديها عليكم إدخال الرمز 894-631-034 وعلامة الشباك، وشكرا لكم. Thank you.
Shukran. And next, we'd like our Mandarin interpreter to introduce themselves.
大家晚上好，欢迎来到第20学区的公众会议。我们今天晚上有提供国语翻译， 如果你需要国语翻译的话，请拨打347-966-4114，然后输入密码466-712-420加井号。重复一遍，如果您需要国语翻译的话，请拨打347-966-4114，然后密码是466-712-420加井号。谢谢。Thank you.
See you. One more logistical item to cover before we officially start. How we will allow for public comment tonight. You should, the last item on the calendar meeting agenda is public comment. This will be the opportunity for any attendee to ask questions or make statements. And when it is time for public comment, we will repeat the following instructions to make sure you have an opportunity to speak. First, we will take questions and comments from participants who signed up using the form. Please press the hand icon on the bottom of your screen to be recognized at that time, or type your name and the word speak in all caps into the chat box. When your name is called, please repeat and spell your first and last name before beginning your comment or question. Second, we will take questions and comments from participants on the language lines. The interpreters will interpret into English. And finally, if you have called in using your phone only, please dial *9 to raise your hand, and Natalia will manually unmute your line to allow you to speak. Please state and spell your first and last name slowly before beginning your comment. Thank you. Okay. The first item on the agenda is just old business to approve the minutes from the last meeting. So Natalia, those are up. Could I ask council members to please scan them and see if any changes would like to be made? Probably scroll down a little, Natalia. Do any members have any comments on the minutes at this time?
I just have the comment of, thank you, Natalia. These are exceptional. Very well done. Thank you.
Okay, so the
motion to approve.
minutes, motion seconded, and so the minutes are approved. Okay, so first tonight, I just want to extend a formal welcome to our invited guests and prominent members of the education community. Tonight, we're joined by State Assemblyman William Colton, who represents Assembly District 47. We're also being joined by Acting Interim Superintendent, Dr. Joseph O'Brien, as well as Ms. Marie Burrow from Brooklyn South, the Director of Operations for District 20. Joining them from the district office is Mr. William Chin, Family Leadership Coordinator. We're also joined tonight by Ms. Cherie Gibson from the CEC elections team at the DOE. We'll be joined by Mr. Michael Gorman and Ms. Jamie Dollinger from the Office of District Planning. Ms. Diane Gurnardis is here, the CSA representative, as is Ms. Ellen Dreisen, the UFT representative. And finally, Ms. Janine Fausner, President of the District 20 President's Council. So with that, I just want to move into our first item on the agenda. Tonight, for this, we're very pleased to be welcoming Assemblyman William Colton. As I mentioned, he represents Assembly District 47. He's here to address one of the most pressing issues facing our schools right now, specifically the state's $15 billion budget gap. Assemblyman Colton sits on the Ways and Means Committee, giving him direct insight into the ongoing budget deliberations. So Assemblyman Colton, I'll ask Natalia to unmute you and the floor is yours. And we greatly appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Assembly member, please unmute.
You hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
This is, as was said, one of the most pressing issues that we face in New York State, because education to me has always been the #1 issue. I was a teacher for 11 years, and I saw firsthand how budgets affect children and affect children for many, many years. So I'm, happy to be here and to talk to you about what the situation with the budget is this year. I actually have some good news to let you know, and also some not so good news. And then I think we have to figure out how do we use the good news and the not so good news to turn it into very good news for all of our children. The not so good news is, as was said, that we have a budget deficit of $15 billion with a B. New York right now, the governor is proposing a budget of an all funds budget. It means state as well as federal money, the combined figure of $192.9 billion. That's up a little bit, like 0.1% from what it was last year. The governor is also presenting a state operating funds budget, which is basically the monies needed to run the state and the agencies of the state, of approximately $103 billion. There's a $15 billion deficit that has to be dealt with. And in the future years, it's projected that deficit is going to continue. It's going to be $6 billion next year. It's going to go up to $8.6 billion in 24-25. So we have a serious financial problem, and we do need to make decisions to deal with it. Now, education is a very interesting issue in this budget, because the governor is stating in his budget that he is increasing the funds for education by $2.2 billion. Now, you look at that and you say, that's pretty good. That seems to be, the governor is giving a lot of money to education. But unfortunately, how that money gets to the school districts, including New York City, can be somewhat of a big problem. Because when you look at the budget, the actual monies that are being cut are in the key areas. For example, there's 11 categories which provide expenses for school districts. Things like textbook aid, things like software, computer hardware, transportation, libraries. And many of these areas are actually being reduced. Now that seems like a contradiction, but it actually is what is being proposed. Foundation aid is the main source of income towards our school districts. And foundation aid is actually flat in terms of last year. We're getting the same amount as we got this year as we got last year. And that's a very big problem for school districts. In actuality, the way the foundation aid is worked out, the formula, the way it's worked out, New York City is actually going to be losing money from what it had last year. And that's a serious problem. When you look at, individual programs, because that's the other part of the budget, monies for programs for children and for teachers. Teacher support services is basically being reduced seriously in this budget, in the proposal. Libraries are being reduced by $4.6 million. That's going to be a very serious impact upon the children. But the way the budget has been construed, the budget director would be authorized to withhold monies from the school budget. Now, last year, the budget director withheld some $800 million from last year's budget. And this is very serious because school districts are counting on a certain amount of money. And all of a sudden they find out that it is all not being passed on to them. And so now they have to make cuts at the last minute and changes at the last minute. It's a totally unsatisfactory kind of a situation. You also find that parts of the budget monies are withheld from. And so where you think you're getting $2.2 billion more overall in education, you're finding out that not only is much of this not being increased into the foundation aid, which is what schools, districts throughout the state rely upon to support their programs, but also the budget director has the authority to make significant cuts later in the year after they assume they had a certain amount of money. And then find out that now the budget director is cutting that money. That's the not so good news. Now, the good news is this. We have just learned in the last few days that the expectation is that New York City and New York State are going to be getting very, very substantial federal monies in this new stimulus package, which is expected to be passed. Under this package, New York State will be getting something like $10 billion in additional federal school monies. New York City is going to be getting approximately 40% of that, $3 to $4 billion additional monies. Also, the state as a whole is going to be getting almost $50 billion in monies from the federal government under this new stimulus that is expected to be passed. That is something that is going to be a big boost, and it changes the whole game plan for what we have to do and what we can do. We now have the opportunity, if parents are loud enough and are organized enough to demand it, to make up to refund the $4.5 billion in the campaign for physical equity monies that New York City has been shortchanged. And New York State has been shortchanged. Not all of it is the city, because there are high need schools also outside the city. But it's about a $4.5 billion that it's been determined. The governor really doesn't want to deal with that issue of CFE. So he changes the formulas and he changes some of the categories around to try to do other things with the money rather than direct it and indicate what he's doing with CFE, refund the monies that are due from CFE. This $10 billion we're expecting to get from the federal government means that we have monies to make up that deficit, that CFE, the monies that are owed by the state to CFE and the local school districts, the city and the other districts throughout New York State that have been owed huge sums of money. So we have a tremendous opportunity, because with this $10 billion infusion that we now expect to receive, there's the opportunity to pay off CFE. The problem that we face is how the money is filtered down into education. How do we make sure that the money gets down to the classrooms? And I think, districts like District 20, this is going to be an opportunity for you to be very vociferous in terms of making the demands and to try to make sure we get this structured right. It's no longer, we may now have an opportunity where it's no longer a question the money is not there, but that there is money there. But the question is, how does it get structured? Now, the one warning is that this is a one-time grant from the federal government. So we can't just rely upon, this year's infusion of federal monies and expect that's going to be there next year. Maybe it will. Maybe under the Biden and with Senator Schumer as majority leader, maybe New York will get a more generous share of federal school monies next year as well, but maybe they won't. So we have to make sure it's used wisely. We've got to make sure that money gets down into the classrooms, that money is used to generate programs, quality programs that will help all the children in the city. Programs that will deal with the various degrees of children, whether you're talking about children who are way underperforming, and this is an opportunity now to develop remedial programs to bring them up to grade level, whether you're talking about children who are in special education, where we've been saying there is no money to meet their individual, plans. We have money that could be used for that purpose now. Whether you're talking about children who have bilingual needs, we have money that can be used in that. But the decision has to be made. Where is it going to be used and how is it going to be used? So it really changes the whole nature of the discussion. There is now going to be money this year available, which we have the opportunity of making up for the CFE deficits, of creating and implementing quality programs, providing, the equipment, restoring, for example, there was a significant cut in the proposed budget for the libraries. That affects library books in the school districts. That affects the ability to buy resources that children can use in order to develop themselves to the greatest potential. And those opportunities are there now, but unless we fight for the money, we're going to have a serious problem next year, and we may not get them going to meet the needs of the school children this year. One of the things that was talked about this year was finding ways to get more monies to close the deficit. We don't have to close the deficit this year, but we are going to have to deal with future years' deficits, which we may not have this infusion of stimulus monies to basically deal with. So there still is a need to come up with more sources, a more progressive way of raising money. We cannot tax middle-income people and low-income people. We cannot continue to put burdens upon them in order to raise the monies that are needed to do the things that the state needs to do. And the most important one of which is educate our children. So we still need to look at ways to make the tax system more progressive. We need to find ways to make the tax system support the needs of all of our children and be able to do it in a fair, progressive way. There's been a number of talks in terms of, taxes where you might tax somebody who's making more than $5 million income, $2 million income, where a small increase may raise billions of dollars of monies that could be used for what's needed. We still need to look at that. This is not the time to just celebrate and say, oh, it looks like the federal government is going to come through and we're going to have billions of dollars more than we expected to have. And therefore, everything is solved. We don't have to, worry about education. We still have to worry about it. We have to make sure that the monies that we get this year are invested wisely so that they actually meet the needs of children, and that we're able to sustain those programs next year when those same monies may not be present. We shouldn't be operating out of a crisis basis. Now, I really believe that parents have a very significant role to play in this. I think parents are critical, that your voice now has an opportunity of making a real difference in terms of what kind of programs we're going to be able to pay for, what kind of enrichment resources we're going to be able to have, how we can really deal with needs of children that really we haven't had the resources for years. This is an opportunity to do that this year. But I think the parents, number one, have to raise their voice and make it clear that we want to make sure those monies go to programs that will benefit children in the classrooms. I think parents have to also make it clear that those monies have to be used in a way, restricted in a way that they will be used for programs that benefit children. And parents know a lot of the needs of the children. They are the real experts in it. They can tell us if the IEPs are not being followed, why aren't they being followed? Parents will find out the impacts of it and why they need it, and they can contribute to that. If money is not going to remedial programs that will help children perform better, parents will see that and the effects of that. We need to make sure that these monies accomplish those purposes. If we need more gifted programs to challenge the children who are overperforming, parents know that, and they act upon it when they don't see it happening. This is an opportunity to make sure all of these things happen, not just one component or one part of the city. There's now monies available where we can accomplish these goals in all parts of the city. We can have programs that meet the needs of children in all parts of the city. This time, I believe the federal government has come through. I think we're going to be getting like an extra $10 billion for education. But the question is, how are we going to use it? And that's where parents really have a real important role to play in demanding that it be used in the ways that will serve the needs of all of the children. And that can be done, but it has to be done carefully. In the budget, right now, pre-K programs are being funded approximately the same amount as last time. There's a $12 million increase. They're being funded at $849 million. In this current budget, you have a situation where foundation aid is totally flat. That needs to be increased. And that's where refunding the CFE can come into play, because that's how money gets funded to individual school districts. Now, New York City is one district out of 700 districts throughout the state. That's one of the problems we faced in the past. There are 700 districts that are trying to squeeze and tweak the monies in a way that will benefit their district. New York City is only one out of those 700, but we have approximately 41% of the children of the state. And we have to make sure that our needs are dealt with, and then that the city, which then will use those monies, puts them down into programs that can effectively educate all of our children in every part of the city. That's basically the problem that we face. I believe that we should use this as an opportunity to refund the monies due under CFE. And I think the parents have to demand that those monies be used according to the needs of their children. They must get down into the classrooms. They shouldn't just be used for consultants. They shouldn't be just be used for fancy contracts. They should be used to deal with programs and enrichment resources that are going to affect the children. I think we need to increase the amount of money for foundation aid, because that's the direct way of getting it into the classroom. And I think we have to also make sure that the individuals, one of the things that the governor did was he took a whole bunch, 11 categories of services that are budgeted to provide individual services to the school districts. and he lumped them together in one block grant. Now, when you do that, number one, you might end up with the same amount of money, or in the governor's proposal, actually, when you lump the 11 things together, you're going to end up with $683 million less than if you paid them individually. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're saving, you're doing it efficiently. It may be you're reducing monies, you're reducing services. So the things that have been blocked together into one grant are things like textbook aid, where school districts buy textbooks, software for computers, money that's available to buy software for computers, money that's available to buy hardware for computers, transportation expenses, library materials. These are all part categories that have now been lumped together into one lump sum. Parents have to be very careful that that is not resulting in those services being cut and the schools having less monies to buy textbooks, to buy computer software, to buy computer hardware, and so forth. And I think parents have to raise their voices. And I think this is the opportunity to do it. I'm going to be very outspoken in terms of demanding that, number one, that we listen to parents and that we use these monies carefully and well, because they may not be there next year. And I think we also have to seriously look at progressive tax measures that are going to not tax middle income and low income people, but that are going to implement some of the taxes on the very wealthy, not significant taxes, as low as possible, but enough to generate monies to carry what we need to do, not only this year, but also be able to carry it next year and the following years, when we may not have a generous stimulus package that may be able to be given to New York. So there's the good news and there's the bad news. The good news is it looks like we're going to get a very generous stimulus package. Now, it hasn't passed yet, so we're not there yet, but I think it is going to pass in the next few days. That's the way it's looking right now. But the not so good news is if we waste that money, if we don't make sure that it's used to meet the needs of children, and parents have a big role, a big opportunity to demand that, because there's no longer going to be, the cry that we don't have the money. The money will be there, but it has to be used in a way that it will benefit the children. And if we fail to do that, we're going to face outgoing years where the money is not going to be there, and we're going to have a much more difficult time doing it. So I'm optimistic. I look forward to, working together with parents, and every CEC should band together and should talk to each other and raise their voices. And I think if we do that, we can turn what looked like a terrible situation into an opportunity for a very progressive change for all of our students.
Great, thank you very much for your comments, Assemblyman Colton.
Yes.
Would you mind taking one or two questions?
Absolutely.
Great. One question I have, just hearing you talk about the federal stimulus, and you mentioned several times, what really matters is how that money gets distributed. Who are the parties involved in deciding how that gets distributed? Let's assume it passes soon. How long would it take to figure out a formula? In other words, who should we be trying to reach out to and make our voice heard with?
I think the governor is one person who has a very big say in terms of how that is done. And of course, both houses of the state legislature. I think that, and we are meeting in conference, we're talking, and we need to make sure that, this is really only the last couple of days when we realized the possibility of getting all this money. We were very pessimistic up until now because there was a real $15 billion deficit. This year, we have the opportunity of getting more monies than we thought we were going to get. And so it becomes incumbent upon the governor and both houses of the state legislature now to formulate that money in a way that it gets down to the purposes that are needed, and to make sure that we also have a progressive tax base, which allows monies to be used next year for those same purposes when we may not have more federal stimulus monies coming in. So we have to prepare for the future now, not wait till there's a crisis next year.
Great. And so the budget committees and the Ways and Means Committee and the Senate and the Assembly, those would be the
Ways and Means Committee in the Senate and the Assembly are very important, and the governor directly. You know, when I years ago when we were fighting on CFE, you know, I would collect thousands and thousands of signatures from schools, and I would have them brought to Albany, and I would have a press conference and bring them to the governor's office. You know, have a press conference announcing, and each school, many schools would get thousands of signatures. And, you know, that was a dramatic way. There's other ways of doing it too, but we need to lobby both the legislature and the governor, because I think all of them have the interest of education at heart. They want to do the right thing. They want to be successful in education. But there's a lot of other pressures that could lead them in other directions if the parents' voices are not made loud and clear. And now is the time to do it, because we have an opportunity, because there's money there that we can use.
Great. One of our council members, I believe Alice, has a question.
Yes. Hi. Hello, Assemblyman Colton.
Yes. Hello. How
for
are
being
you?
with us. I just wanted to backtrack. You mentioned that we can't depend on the stimulus money. Obviously, that's a one-time shot. What are your feelings about a wealth tax, and do you support one going forward for educational purposes? Because we're going to lose a lot of tax revenue. We haven't even begun to know how much tax revenue we've lost. So this is a problem that's going to last years and years. I know you mentioned a progressive tax. Is that what you mean by that? And
yes, that is what I mean by that. I do support that. And, you know, I think that we were working very hard to bring that about. I think it's a progressive tax. We cannot tax the middle income and the lower income families.
Right.
They've been paying and suffering too much. But the very wealthy, many of whom have actually benefited during this past year or two with COVID, many of them can afford to carry a little bit more of a fair share. And I think that's what we have to look at. And that's what we have to, and we shouldn't just allow the fact that there's monies now being provided by the stimulus, so it's no longer necessary to press for that progressive tax structure.
totally agreed. And you said 5 million was that limit for families, 5 million and above?
Yeah, well, 5 million. There's also some other proposals that go down to 2.5 or 3 million. But I think the $5 million one would get us billions of dollars.
Yes, yes. New York State has more billionaires than any state in the union. So yes, I think so. Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any other council members who would like to ask a question at this time? Okay. And I don't know if, yeah, I think we can probably call it there and move on to the rest of our agenda. But Assemblyman Colton, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. It's great to know that you're such an ardent supporter of education. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. We all have to be, because it's the most important issue for the future of our state.
Definitely. Thank you very much, sir, for attending tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. We will now move on to a very related topic, which is the Contracts for Excellence presentation. This is a state aid funding program, and it is it's targeted aid to schools in the district. And we are joined, tonight's presentation will be led by Acting Interim Superintendent Joseph O'Brien, and as well as Maria Burrow from Brooklyn South. And so, Dr. O'Brien, are you?
Yes. Hi,
available?
Steve. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see you, and thank you for joining us this evening. I have a very special presentation here tonight that I'd like to deliver tonight on behalf of Chancellor Carranza and the rest of the New York City Department of Education. This is something we do each year. And tonight I'm joined by Miss Marie Burrow, Director of Operations for Brooklyn South. Marie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
indeed.
great. I'm having a little trouble with my video. I apologize. I keep trying to turn it on. I will work on it.
That's fine, Marie. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And Natalia, do you have the slideshow available?
I'm bringing it up right now.
All right, great. We're going to go right to page 2. So as Assemblyman Colton shared, the New York City Department of Education receives foundation aid from the state, making up a portion of the overall budget. A November 2006 Court of Appeals decision stated that every public school child in the state has a right to a sound basic education, and that the state has the responsibility to increase funding for New York City public schools. As a result of this court decision, the New York State legislature passed legislation requiring that for each school district that has at least one school that requires academic progress or is in need of improvement, the school district would receive an increase in foundation aid, and a portion of that foundation aid would be subject to the categorical spending requirements of the Contract for Excellence. Funds were first received in the 2007-2008 school year. These funds, under state law, must be distributed to schools that meet certain requirements and must be spent by those schools in designated program areas as set forth in the legislation. Funds must be support specific program initiatives such as class size reduction, time on task, teacher and principal quality initiatives, middle and high school restructuring, full day pre-K programs, and model programs for English language learners. Funds should be used towards meeting schools' overall educational goals as outlined in the School Comprehensive Educational Plan, known as the SCEP, and must be allocated predominantly to students with the greatest educational needs, such as English language learners, students in poverty, students with disabilities, and students with low academic achievement or at risk of not graduating. Funds must supplement, not supplant, local funding or other grants. Expenditures made during C4E funds must supplement, not supplant, funding provided by the school district. However, the SED has provided guidance explaining that certain expenditures may be paid for with C4E funds, even though these programs or expenditures were originally or have been typically paid for by the district or by other grants. For example, if a program had been funded by a different grant, but that grant funding has been cut, then C4E funds can be used to fund that program. Natalia, do you have, we're on slide 4 right now. These funds could also be used for a new or expansion of existing programs only. So at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Burrow to share with us the rest of the presentation. Great, we're on page 5 now, Natalia. Oh, I think you passed it. 5. All right, great.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Dr. O'Brien. So what we're looking at here in this graphic is the breakdown of how the state's C4E funding has been preliminarily scheduled for this current school year. And as you see from the $531 million, $183 million was kept in an unrestricted category, and $348 million is in restricted categories, which means that they must be specifically tied to the intentions of the funding. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So from here, within that restricted funding, the breakdown that we're looking at is the $104 million that went into targeted allocations among the schools, $214 million or 61% in discretionary allocations, and maintenance of effort of $30 million or 9% of that funding that has come in. These next few slides do just further break down how those discretionary funds, the targeted funds, and the maintenance of efforts have been distributed within the school's programs. So we have the 214 million of that's 61%, and most of it, or that 61% of the funding was to continue the services of the existing C4E programs that had been approved in the past. The $104 million, or the 30% of the total restricted funds, were given to schools receiving the allocations based upon their overall student need and meeting those C4E funding requirements. And the 9% has been used for maintenance of effort or to continue programs that have already been approved and been existing, such as the summer programs. So from the $348 million of restricted funding, this is a graphic breakdown of where those funds are being used to support the programs, the allowable programs. And as you'll see, the largest amount, or 92%, has been directed toward teachers. We have 5%, or $17.6 million, that has been directed towards pupil personnel service providers. And other than personnel services, which is outside of those staff positions in schools, other spending dollars, it's 3% of the funding, or $9.4 million. What we are looking at here is those C4E dollars within CEC 20 and how the funds have been distributed. As you'll see, the full day pre-K were not part of those C4E funds. Middle school and high school restructuring as well did not apply. The breakdown of how the funds have been spent, the largest amount going into it's 45.14% when it's a class size reduction. And then you can see the dollars or percentages that were devoted towards model programs for ELS, teacher and principal quality initiatives, and our time on task efforts.
Excuse me, Marie, I'm sorry to interrupt. It sounds like there's someone's background noise coming through. Sounds like kitchen sounds and a dog. If everyone could just check they're on mute, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Marie. Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. What you'll see here is that when these dollars are scheduled within schools, under these umbrella categories of class size reduction, time on task, teacher and principal quality initiatives, there are further subcategories. So here is a more detailed picture of how the funds are distributed within the schools. Under class size reduction, for example, it would be maintaining class size. So if class size reduction had occurred in prior years, it may not be further reduced in the current year, but it's maintaining that class size reduction initiative. Time on task efforts, before and after school programs, or dedicated instruction AIS efforts. Our teacher and principal quality initiatives will fall into categories such as leadership coaches, teacher coaches, mentoring for new staff. Again, this is just another way of looking at the data and the breakdown of how the funding has been spent within the district. Middle and high school restructuring does not apply. The model programs for ELS, you'll see the distribution of funding between parent involvement, teacher recruitment, and innovative programs. Natalia, thank you. So for this current school year, the DOE will continue its efforts to reduce class size, one of the allowable activities for which contracts for excellence funds may be spent pursuant to the C4E legislation in the following ways. For the 2020-2021 school year, the New York City Department of Education will continue to focus on the lowest performing schools in its class size reduction efforts. The New York State Commissioner of Education has determined that the 5-year C4E class size plan created in 2007, when the C4E legislation was issued, is no longer in effect. there is an opportunity for public comments to be sent directly to the Contract for Excellence. To the Contract for Excellence, I'm sorry. I thought someone was speaking. There was a little feedback. So, right, directly to their email address for questions that go beyond this PowerPoint presentation.
Steve, if you could mute everybody, Steve, and let Marie unmute herself, that will solve the problem.
Am I able to do that, Vito?
Whoever's the host.
Yeah, I just need to.
I took care of it. It was Lily. I took care of it, but if you could mute everybody and just have Maria unmute herself, that would work for everybody.
Yep, I'm looking.
Are you able to hear me?
Go ahead, Maria. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, basically, this is the information for additional public comments and the email address where they can be directed.
Thank you so much, Marie.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate that. So at this time, Steve, is there any public comments that people would like to share?
If anyone would like to make a comment on the Contracts for Excellence presentation, please.
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
Has any evaluation been done on the impact of these funds? You've got a lot of categories you're putting the money into. Have you evaluated how it's worked as far as student outcomes?
Is it one thing that Simeon, it's a good question. I think the DOE regs, it was like a public comment session now, and that's it. And so your comment's been recorded.
We brought these people in to give this presentation, so I think we as CEC members should have an opportunity to ask them questions.
I'm just saying what was in the written regulations we got from the DOE.
Well, is the DOE saying they will not respond to questions?
It's a public comment. The way I read it is it's a public comment period kicking off now, and it's either written or verbal questions during the presentation. Everything's recorded. Your question has been recorded. So that's the way that was written and sent to me.
So are they going to answer the questions or not?
Hello. Okay, I wanted to make sure my microphone was back on. The presentation this evening is to explain how the funding is distributed within the district. Gives you an overview of the types of programs that are there. For details regarding whether or not the funding has been effective in the way that you've asked about, would be not part of this presentation this evening.
Okay, can you explain how it's allocated to each school and how each category is chosen for that school?
The schools that are allocated the funding meet with their SLT, and as they are crafting their CEP, they decide how to best use the funds based upon the needs of their students.
And are they given a flat amount and then they get to decide how to use it, or do they request a certain amount and then it's decided?
No, it is not requested by the schools for the amount of funding that they receive. The formula for deciding what the allocations will be to each school definitely dates back several years at this point, and that's where that maintenance of effort comes in. They've been maintaining what's been in there, but that was determined based upon student needs going back many years at this point.
It's based on per pupil plus some kind of weighting based on the needs of the students in each school. Is that correct?
I do not have the exact details of how those dollars were originally allocated to the schools.
Okay. But it changes each year based on their enrollment in some way?
No, it is not tied to student enrollment, as
So
other funding categories may be.
So it's based on one point in time in the past and it just continues on?
There was criteria that was established going back to the original allocation of this funding. And beyond that, after those first 2 years, it has been maintained.
So needs in the schools may have changed, but the allocation of the funding is not?
I do not know if they've made changes to any. I couldn't answer citywide on how the budget office has distributed that funding.
Thank you, Marie. And I know it's pretty clear in the regs that for this public comment section. It's not a Q&A, Simeon. Sorry.
Okay, well, then my comment is that it should be allocated based on need, and if it's not, which we're not clear about, that should be done. There should be an annual assessment of the need of each school, and the money should be going to the kids who need it most.
When you say
Absolutely, I agree, and I think you should encourage you to write your comment using the email address provided.
Simeon, what do you mean by need? The need as far as versus like fearful studying, or?
Yeah, there's usually formulas based on economic status, based on special needs, based on English language learner
Okay.
status, based on.
I don't think this is allowed. Steve, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Simeon, thank you.
Okay. Let's keep going. Would anyone like to just make a comment on the Contracts for Excellence presentation, sort of a public statement, or otherwise we can move on? And we can certainly work on this as a council. There's definitely details we can dive into here in the days ahead. If we
One quick thing, I'm just curious, if we're not allowed to ask questions here, then why are we a school board? Like, I'm really puzzled by this. I know no one created, I mean, we didn't create these rules right here, but that's, this is wild to me. So I just want to state that.
Thank you, Alan. No, it's a fair statement. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Okay, Dr. O'Brien and Maria, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Yep, have a good night.
Thank you, Marie.
You're welcome, Dr. O'Brien.
Okay, and then our next and the last item in the sort of budget-related sequence of agenda items we have tonight is the letter to Governor Cuomo. And Natalia, I saved that in the shared drive, the support letter. Are you able to pull that up now? It's in the meeting agenda shared drive folder. Perfect. So, council members, we're just going to, I think we've all had a chance to read this letter. It's drafted by a number of education organizations in the state of New York, the New York Council of School Superintendents, the Conference of Big Five School Districts, the New York State School Boards Association. This letter is addressed to Governor Cuomo, and it's interesting in light of the comments we just heard on the stimulus bill, that some of this pressure might be alleviated, but again, the bill hasn't been passed, and I think it's still our job to advocate based on what we know. And so this letter is to be delivered to Governor Cuomo, asking him not to offset federal stimulus funding with cuts in state funding. I believe we should be signing on to this. I believe most of you do as well. So are there any comments first of all, or should we move to a vote?
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry, I have to figure out how to share my screen again. So based on what Assemblyman Colton had said, should this be more directed towards the having the funding forwarded to the city? It seems very focused on state, if I'm not mistaken. Is there, and I don't want to, I obviously the 23rd hour, I don't want to really, throw a monkey wrench in anything, but are we seeing enough of the focus of this letter pointed towards New York City?
I mean, this is a state letter, Adele, for sure. Yeah. And we could obviously get into city issues sort of separately. This is just a letter that came to us. It was sent by the Tom Shepard on the PEP.
I mean, do we want to discuss possible? I mean, I'd like to hear from other council members. Obviously, I acquiesce to the majority, but is it a hard thing? Does it have to be identical? Can we include a specific request that funding not be offset, that it be properly distributed to New York City? In particular, with if the statistic is correct, 40% of student population is in New York City.
So can I speak to that?
Go ahead, Alice. Yep.
So just, I think it makes it a stronger letter being identical and having been signed on to by however many CECs, I think 20 so far, and however many other officials and parent leaders. So that's one, I think it makes it a stronger letter to be uniform. But two, I think, you know, pursuant to what Assemblyman Colton was talking about, there are 700 school districts in the state or something, and we are considered one school district. So there must be a weighting formula already. You know what I mean? We have always had 40% of the students, and yet we're always considered one of 700. So our one district must be a super district. Like, I don't know exactly how the math works, but there's no way that, you know, we are getting 1/700th of the fund. We're obviously getting some formula. So I don't know that it's necessary. And like I said, I want to sign it tonight. I want it as soon as possible so that, you know, it can be, the more people say the same thing, the stronger that message is. That's it.
Would any other council members like to speak? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the council signing on to this letter?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, there you go.
I think we can probably do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Are any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. We will have CEC 20 added to the signatories of the letter to Governor Cuomo. Okay. Next up on the agenda was the CCEC elections outreach presentation from Ms. Cherie Gibson. I was notified she might be a few minutes late. Natalia, do we see Ms. Gibson in the signed in yet?
I'm here. Yes, she's here.
Great. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for taking some time tonight to explain the process to us. So take it away. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I am pleased to be here at CEC 20. If I could share my screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, you've been made call, so you should be able to.
When I switch devices, I switched to come back on. So this one doesn't have co-host, but thank you. So thank you. Perfect. So I am here tonight to talk to you about the Community Education Council's elections, which are happening this spring. I'm trying to get my slideshow. Oh, there we go. So you should be able to see my screen, should be able to see my slide. Perfect. Thank you. So we are here because we are now in phase 2 of the election cycle, which we are accepting applications for those who want to serve on a community or citywide education council. So this year, this cycle, we are asking you to run, serve, and lead. So welcome to 2021 CEC election season. What is different? We go through these every 2 years. And so it's like, what is the big hype and the excitement around this year? So due to advocacy of current CEC members, we were able to expand the voting base. And so no longer is it just a few members of the PTA leadership. It is now all families have an opportunity to vote for who sits on their education council. So of course, now that means we went from about 5,000 people being able to vote to over 1 million people now being able to vote. So of course we had to look at DOE is not the Board of Elections. So it was like, how are we going to run these elections? What are we going to utilize? And so looking at the platforms that DOE has that fulfills what we need in terms of being able to vet and determine who's a parent, who's a legal guardian, we are utilizing the New York City Schools account, the NYXA, or the My Student. All 3 of those are for for this one account is that we all know them a little differently. But the New York City Schools account, the NYCSA, is the way that parents will be able to apply to run for a council seat as well as to vote when voting opens. So your participation happens in getting to know your education counselors, as those of you who are here tonight, and continue to do how they're serving your community. Apply for a seat this month if you are so inclined and you think that you could add and provide impact. And then everyone else participate by voting when voting opens May 1st, and voting happens from May 1st through May 11th. So I'll quickly, because you guys are an education council, so you know about the education council. There are 36 education councils in New York City. It's one of the largest parent, if not the largest parent engagement program. And you know what the work of the CECs do. I always speak a little bit about citywides because that's usually the ones that everyone's not as knowledgeable about what they do. But we have 4 citywide councils, all focused on large populations of students within the system. So we have a council for high school, CCHS, for special ed, CCSE, and for English language learners, CCEL, as a citywide for English language learners, and CCD 75 for all students in a D75 program. And they work with, some of those work with superintendents, but others really work with Central and their the communities that they're serving in terms of providing annual reports and recommendations on policies that directly affect their representative group. So how do you know which councils that you're eligible to run for or vote in? So eligibility is student driven. So wherever your student goes to school, whatever programs that your student is involved with will determine what councils that you're eligible to run or vote in. So using our examples here, so Nia is eligible to run in 3 and vote in 3 councils because she has a 4th grader with an IEP in a District 18 school. And then she has a son who's a 9th grader in a Bronx high school. She's eligible to run or vote in CEC 18, the Citywide Council for Special Education, and the Citywide Council for High School. Similarly, Vladimir, he has a son who's a 7th grader in a District 6 school. So he's also an English language learner. So he's eligible to run or vote in 2 councils, CEC 6 or the Citywide and the Citywide Council for English Language Learners. Now, I just do want to say that this example is based on 1 parent, but if it's a 2-parent household, each parent is eligible to run. They would run through their individual New York City Schools account. So our timeline, we are currently in, as I said, the application period where for the month of February is when you can submit your applications. As of last count earlier today, we'll have over 2,000 applications already. So the city is stepping up, parents are stepping up. So we hope more will come from the District 20 community. And then once the application closes, beginning March 15th through April 30th, each community district's president's council will host a candidate forum, which we used to do these in person, but they will be virtual. And it's an opportunity for the communities, for families to get to know the candidates that are running for their community education council. It'll be an opportunity to ask questions and to hear their vision and their platform. So we do encourage and hope that everyone will attend. And then voting opens May 1st and runs through May 11th. This is mandated by New York state law. So we will open on May 1st and we will close after May 11th. And then on Saturday, well, before that, excuse me, if there's any need for runoffs or anything like that, that will happen within the week after voting closes. So we will be able to post results by the end of May, first week of June. And then on Saturday, June 26th, our newly elected officials will have their full day of orientation, which closes out with the swearing-in ceremony, and they will begin their new 2-year term from July 1st through June 30th, 2023. So just to give you a little on the application, So we use the New York City Schools account because based on that information, we can preload it with your students' information. So it then helps to pick the councils. So parents don't have to figure out the councils. It'll be listed there. And so a lot of this cuts the time that you used to have to spend on filling out the application. So when you come to your mystudent.nyc page, you will see the green banner that has information about the Education Council. When you sign into your New York City Schools account, if you have more than one student, you will see the two tiles here. If you have only one student, you will automatically see your student's information. But at the top is this lovely green banner that has all the information about Education Council, and you would click the apply now to be taken to the candidate application. The first page of the application is the student information page. This is important because you have to review this information, make sure everything there is accurate. If it's not, do not affirm that it is. You just send us an email at elections2021@schools.nyc.gov, have us look at it and correct anything, then begin the application process. But if everything here is accurate and you affirm it by clicking that, checking that box, you'll be taken to the next page will be your council eligibility. So based on that student information, it will show you which councils that you're eligible to run in. You are eligible to run in more than one council. You do not have to, but you can. So in this example, this person has 5 councils that they're eligible for. You would just click the boxes of wish to apply or I do not wish to apply. If you choose to apply to run for more than one council, the next page you will get the council preference. And this is a page that you may need to stop and take some time to think about because you need to rank the councils in order of your preference of serving. So whichever is your first choice, your second choice, etc., however you order them, because you can run for more than one council, but you will only be seated on one council. And if you win in more than one race, you will then, the one is selected by your preferences here. So you take the time to think about it and do it here because there will be no time to change it later. So it'll be based on what you select here. Then you finish, as we finish up the application, you come to the candidate statement. And so we always strongly encourage people to fill out the candidate statement. We're making an extra push and request during these virtual times because now that the opportunity to get out into the community, go to meetings and events in person is limited, the candidate statement becomes a way for the community to get a good beginning sense of who you are, why you're running, and what your experience is. We will be putting candidate statements on our website as well as we put together a candidate brochure that is not handed out, but this time, but will be available for download at the candidate forums. And throughout the application, you are able to stop and save and come back. So if you get here and you need some time, you can save it. Just make sure to come back before February 28th. So just a couple of important reminders. Every parent has their own separate NYCSA schools account. It's a separate creation code. Make sure you use the code for yourself, not your spouse or partner, and you get the creation codes from your parent coordinator. If you need any assistance with it, your parent coordinator can troubleshoot and help. Every applicant must have their student linked to their NYCSA account before you begin the application. As we stated, every parent of a public school student is eligible to run for any council that serves their student. Couple of caveats, 3K or pre-K. So 3K parents, unfortunately, you're not eligible to run or vote. Pre-K parents, if you are a pre-K parent that is in a school with a DBN, you are eligible to vote and run. But if you are a pre-K parent at a CBO or a district pre-K center, you are not eligible unless what trumps all is the IEP, unless your student has an IEP. If your student has an IEP, you are eligible to run for the Citywide Council of Special Education. This is not a DOE decision. This is the law. The law. At the time of the law, it has not been expanded because of when we have now expanded 3K and pre-K. So we're hoping by the next election cycle, now that these two components are going to be staying, that they will expand it and change the law. As we stated, you can apply for more than one council. You do have to rate them for your preference, but the same school rule still applies, which means only one parent from each school will be seated on a council. So if we have more than one parent that has the highest votes, both will not be seated one, and priority is first given to an English language learner or IEP parent, then we consider the parent with the most votes. So just quickly on voting. So when the voting opens on May 1st, you access your ballot through your NICSA, which will then take you to the e-ballot. The ballots are families have 1 vote per child in each council that they're eligible in. So it's not each parent doesn't get a vote, it's the family gets a vote. Can parents allocate which, like, you do these councils and I'll do these councils? Yes, you can do it that way, but we also encourage that you just come together, look at the councils and vote as a family. Once one parent votes, the other, if they log into the account, will just see a completed ballot. They will not be able to log a vote as well. So just to recap, the ways that you can participate in this year's election cycle: link your children to your New York City Schools account to run or vote. Make sure you reach out to your parent coordinator to get the code, or if you have any issues linking, they can help you. Continue to increase your knowledge. You do attend education council meetings. How about checking out a citywide as well? But also ask questions as to what they do, see if it's a fit for yourself, and just please continue to help us get the word out about the elections. Talk to your fellow parents about running and voting, and continue to forward emails and flyers about the campaign. We are doing daily information sessions in different languages, so people can come on and find out information about Education Council. So you should have those. If not, I will put them in the flyers for week 3. Next week, we will be holding council sessions in the chat. So please join us if you have any continued interest and want to ask any further questions. So at this time, I can take any questions if you have, but if you have questions later, you can email them to us at elections2021@schools.nyc.gov. And that's the end of my spiel. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cherie. Can I ask one question on the NICSA accounts? If my wife has signed up for the account already for my child, does that mean I'm essentially locked out? I cannot use my own account? In other words, once the code has been used to sign up for a NICSA account, is it only one account per family, per kid?
No. It's you each have if your wife has it, she has her own creation code, and you have your own creation code to create your account.
Okay, I've had some trouble getting things set up, but anyway, I'll take that offline. Thank you.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Alan.
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you, Cherie, for being here. Really appreciate it. And I think I speak for a lot of parents, and I'm glad to see the process open up. Although I wait for the day that students are allowed to run and vote. But I want to ask. So the timeline seems a bit short for February. It's like one of the shortest month of the year, and so forth. Is there a possibility that there will be an extension, given that next week, there's a winter break? And I'm just curious in terms of sort of getting to folks. And a question related to that: how are we doing outreach to folks, to, let's say, who have limited, digital divide challenges, disparities, or may not check their email for whatever reasons, and so forth? Just in terms of those barriers, what are we doing to get out the wording? So those are just 2 interrelated questions.
Not a problem. So the application period is always February. It may seem that, but it is always the full month of February, the 4 weeks for it. But yeah, we recognize it, but that's by New York State law that the application period is at this time period. In terms of outreach, so please do definitely be on the lookout. Some people have been sending us emails of them, and we do love to see it, but because we've spent money on marketing, and so we want to see it. So we have posters up telling people about running for it, and we will have posters out about voting, but right now everything is about the run. So we have marketing flyers that go out, social media, radio ads. If you know the Link NYC kiosk, we have posters and things of ways to find out more information. And of course, I mean, our biggest part is our school partners, you know, so the parent coordinators send out our flyers and things of that nature. And, you know, but the virtual space, a lot of it now moves into that. So in utilizing social media, but we still are, there's postcards being mailed home. And of course, that's one of the big pluses of the Nixa, is being able to have accurate email and active emails for families. So, and they're emailing there as well. So there is stuff all over the city. So we're hoping that if you see it, I got pictures of a poster up in a bodega, they're at laundromats, pharmacies. So it's all places that we hope everyone is. But yes, we do recognize being in this space. A lot more is on the virtual and social side, social media side. Any other questions?
Don't think so.
All right.
Such a comprehensive overview. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, with that, we will move on to our next presentation of the meeting, which is from the Office of District Planning. We welcome Michael O'Gorman and Jamie Dollinger. Michael and Jamie, are you here? And Natalia, can you unmute them?
Yes, we are here. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone. By way of quick introduction, my name is Michael O'Gorman. I'm Senior Associate Director of Planning with the Office of District Planning. See a lot of familiar faces on the council tonight. I think your council has worked really closely with Jamie and I in the past on a couple of different projects. And so we're here tonight just to kind of give a quick and brief overview for your community members who are joining about our office, the work that we do, and then we're going to specifically talk about a proposal that has been recently published that's impacting 2 school communities in District 20. And so really quickly, for folks maybe who are unfamiliar with Jamie and my team, we work at the Office of District Planning and essentially kind of work within 2 big chancellor's regulations that govern how we think about how school buildings are used and also how we think about zone lines in districts across the city. And so one big way that we work, and we worked really closely with your council in 2019, was a rezoning for a new building that was built, building K746, and then that rezoning went into effect this current school year. And then the other big bucket we work in is those big changes to what we call school utilization. Essentially, how are buildings being used and how are they serving students? That could look like, depending upon where we are, merging schools or changing the grades that are served in a particular building. It might look like adding different types of programming and or opening new schools just on in new buildings. So I think we're all pretty familiar with working on rezonings together for most of us, but tonight we're going to really kind of focus on one proposal that falls in that second bucket, which is a change to how school buildings are used. And so to kind of just give a little bit of the context and background, about 2 years ago or so, the School Construction Authority, the SCA, reached out to our team at District Planning, and we also were in communication at that time with Superintendent Constantino, but I believe Dr. O'Brien was there as well, and spoke about a need for some construction and repairs at PS 170. Because the construction and repairs at PS 170 to the roof and some of the parapets on the building needed to be done, there was actually the need to have to move some students. They could expedite that work and have a shorter timeline to complete it. So what tends to happen when construction projects that impact space in buildings and other school districts, we look at nearby schools and find a place essentially to use as swing space, where we'll move a portion of the students from one school building to another school building so the SCA can complete a construction project. We actually worked last year with the PS 170 community over the course of a couple of months, engaged in a proposal, published a proposal, and we were intending to move the first grade of PS 170 to that new building K746, because it was the only building in District 20 at that time that had sufficient excess space. And then students would be, from PS 170 would be at that building for 2 years. As it turns out, there was a global pandemic, which put delays on a lot of the construction projects and paused almost all construction citywide, as many of you are aware. And then that required us to kind of rethink what that was going to mean for PS 170 and ultimately the timeline of that original proposal and project. while they paused the construction at 170 and many other buildings. We also spoke with Principal Wu over the summer, and he was interested in not going forward with the temporary reciting as well, because he wanted to make sure that his students and families were kind of able to all stay together for this current school year, given a lot of the other impacts from COVID-19 and the pandemic. All of that to say, because that proposal wasn't implemented this current school year, our team then has to essentially re-go through this engagement process with the community at PS 170. We had to re-identify space again and kind of think through what would be a suitable siting option for the students from PS 170. Over the course of this past year, we actually realized that PS 127, which is about a half mile from PS 170, is going to have a new addition projected to open in fall 2021. And so for our team, and also working with the superintendent and the school construction authority, thought, you know what, it might make a lot more sense and be less of an impact on the PS 170 community if we could use some of the excess space from that addition at PS 127. And so last Friday, we issued a proposal to temporarily recite those students from PS 170 to PS 127, again, following Chancellor's Regulation A190. And so a part of that process was obviously working with the superintendent, kind of chatting through what the idea looks like, what we think, having confidential meetings at first with the principals of both schools to make sure it makes sense. And I see Principal Alejandro is here as well. So we were in touch with her and her SLT. And then we reached out to SLTs as well, including your CEC, to kind of chat through what we were thinking, what was going to be going on with the proposal, et cetera. Now that the proposal has been officially published or posted, as we say, we have entered the 45-day window of public comment. And so what that looks like is it gives folks a chance to read this proposal, which is an EIS, an educational impact statement, a lengthy document. Give folks a chance to kind of read through that, find out what questions they may have, ask those questions by calling the dedicated phone number we have for proposals, as well as the email address, reaching out to their SLTs and school leaders. And then eventually we'll have, in the beginning of March, a joint public hearing. And the joint public hearing is the chance for folks in District 20, particularly PS 170 and PS 127, to come and offer their comments on the proposal. And then we ultimately gather all of those comments, respond to them, make that available publicly in what we call the public comment analysis, and we share that with the PEP. And the PEP finally is the large body or the final body that ultimately will vote on the proposal that would go into effect for the 2021-2020 school year for 2 years. And so that's kind of where we are in this process. The proposal is live, available on the PEP's website. It's been distributed to schools. And we are in that period of time where folks can we'll ask questions, we'll answer them, and kind of move forward. So I will open up to folks if you have specific questions about that proposal. I'm more than happy to chat about it.
Any questions from council members at this time or other members of the community?
Hi, Michael. It's Alice. How are you?
Hi, Alice. Well, thanks.
So I'm going to ask you the same question that I've been asking, which is 170 has like a second floor with outdoor space, I guess is the best way to call it, which keeps developing huge puddles, which makes it impossible for the children to go outside and play. So again, I'm advocating for some sort of work order to be put in, even if it's, 4 to 8 or a 4 to 12 work order, that, they repave the outdoor space. I know the school was asking for an awning, but I think it's probably just a matter of repaving if it's puddles, right? Or at least the SCA go out there and figure out.
Yes.
What the problem?
Thank you for raising that again, Alice. We spoke with, just transparently for folks, with Alice and Steve a few weeks ago when we were kind of in the initial public sort of rollout of the proposal. And we did relay that to SCA, and we'll make sure that we once again surface it with them. I can't speak to if it's a part of this particular project or not. In a perfect world, it would be, but I don't know if that's the case or not. So
I'm just saying it more to have it on the record. I know you're aware. Thank you,
Yes.
Michael.
Thank you, Alice.
Steve, what Weezer, if you're on, I just have a quick question about Q&A. Are we allowed
What's
to have public comments now, or are those?
Is it in your agenda right now? I
It's
mean,
not right now. This was in the agenda right now. I realize I might have misspoken when I said public just now, but we have a couple of members of the public with their hands up, and I'm just.
it's up to you all if you wanted to. You'd have to vote to change the agenda technically, if you wanted to open it up now.
I move to allow comments on this specific topic.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So Natalia, go ahead. I think first up was I think that's Janine, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's D20.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me, Natalia. That's me.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Natalia. Michael, quick question. So you said that if this proposal goes through and 170 puts their kids into 127, does that mean then it's a separate entity? So when it comes time to counting the numbers for the financial reasons, it's going to be different?
Excellent question. Yep. So both schools are going to continue to be treated as their own DBN, right? The students from 170 who are going to be at the 127 site will be 170 students still, have 170 teachers, administrators, et cetera. And the same thing would apply for 127. So we don't have any impacts.
And then just one quick follow-up. So how long would this last, and when does 170 finally get them their school back in order?
Excellent question. So it'd be for 2 school years, the 2021-22 and 2022-23 school years. And after that, then all students would be served back in 170.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Paulette?
Thanks, Natalia. Hi, Michael.
Paulette, how are you?
So good to see you.
Likewise.
Quick question, just for clarity. And hi, Miss Alejandro. It's nice to see your face too. If I remember, wasn't this actually put up at the PEP for vote for co-location at 9:36?
Excellent question. Yep. So initially last year, that was the proposal. The building 746, which has 939 and 936 in it. That was the plan. But unfortunately, because of some of the construction delays that took place citywide, we had to pause the project at 170. And as a result of that, regardless of like what had happened, we have to essentially rewrite and reissue the proposal because it didn't go into effect this current school year. But very good memory. That was last year's PEP. It was voted on and it was approved. So now we're just kind of re-going through the A190 process again.
Okay, if you'll just allow me just for some clarity. So will they be, so moving forward then, they are staying at 170. There's no other plans to move them over to 936 after the renovations are done, right? Like 936 is staying the way it is, and they're going to stay at 127 until the construction updates are done at 170, correct?
Yep, that's correct. So essentially, because we weren't able to implement last year's proposal, this new proposal that we have kind of put forth and are engaging on doesn't even include 746 because 127 was a lot closer. So it's just those 2 buildings, K170 and K127, that would be impacted. Great question.
Any further questions?
Would the principals of the schools like to say anything? Hi, Miss Alejandro. I don't know if Mr. Wu is here.
Okay.
Good evening. How are you?
Hi, Agatha.
Hi. So we've had several meetings in regard to this new proposal. Tomorrow we're actually having another school leadership team meeting and going to discuss the documents that were just recently shared with us. But like we discussed at the meeting, you know, we're here for the children, and we will work together to make sure that the families of PS 170 are accommodated. I know that they're very close to us, so it will definitely be easier on them, you know, once they come to our school. So of course, my first instinct, as most of you know, we're always PS 127 was always looking forward to having, you know, all that extra space, but we will definitely work together and play nice in the sandbox and welcome our 170 students and families, because that's what we do at District 20. So we will work together. And Tony and I have a nice relationship, and we'll do what we can to give the students what they need, whether they are at 170 or 127. So we'll continue to plan ahead and make sure that they are comfortable at our school. So and I think the meeting, Michael, is March 11th, correct? 6 o'clock?
That's exactly right. Yep. So for folks who are interested, and this is probably a great way to kind of close out, for folks who are interested in providing that commentary on the proposal, the joint public hearing, which is expected to be held again via teleconference or over Zoom, is March 11th at 6 p.m. And so if you're interested in kind of getting the link and involved with all of that, both school communities have access to all of that. It's also all published and publicly available on the PEP's website, the Panel for Educational Policy. So please feel free to come join, offer commentary, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks so much, Michael, for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is CEC President's Report. And I'm just going to take the time to mention a couple of initiatives that we are working on or are planning to work on. For those who weren't able to be at the business meeting earlier tonight, we discussed an initiative that Adele Doyle is leading up. The goal is to highlight artistic achievements of students in the district, and we're still working on a lot of the details, more to come, but we just wanted to let everyone know that's in the works, and we're trying to think of the right structure and form and format for that. There's a second kind of initiative underway that we're working on, which is really to try and give our social media platforms a little bit of a charge, get a little more traffic going there. Natalia's been working really hard at expanding the amount of information content that we get on a daily basis, from making sure we're on all the right mailing lists, and she's been very active in increasing the level of content on our Facebook page. Especially. And so we just like to just note that we're going to try and do a better job of making that more of a resource for the community with a good range of content. And then one thing that we didn't get to discuss, but I do want to mention here because it's a high priority of mine, and it's going to be on the agenda at the next business meeting or possibly a special meeting in between, is just starting to think about doing more outreach to parents. This is something I've been talking about generally speaking, but really want to try and think about a concrete way to, develop some kind of survey. I know there's a lot of surveys out there, and everyone gets a little bit of survey fatigue at times, but I strongly believe we should try and do a better job of reaching some of the parent communities in the district, maybe that aren't heard from as regularly, and so that's sort of an idea that I'm interested in seeing sort of taken to a more concrete sort of structured level in the near term, and really through the remainder of my term here on the CEC. So those are just three things I want to mention that we're working on. And that's all I have for right now. And next up, we have Janine Faustner, the president of the President's Council. And I believe, Janine, you were just going to give us an update from your end.
Sure. Hi, Steve. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. President's Council, for those who don't know, is District 20's PTA presidents who get together once a month to discuss all the issues that parents have or concerns. Some of the concerns are fundraising, how to keep their school above water by helping the principals, how to use the roadmap for IEPs for their kids, and how to reach all parents, because all parents need to be informed. We also, as President's Council, are now apparently going to try and get the word out for the new CEC elections that are coming up. We meet once a month, the second Friday of every month. Some of the members are on tonight. That's pretty much, we're pretty quiet right now considering we are all virtual, but I thank Steve for working close with him to get everything underway. Thank you, Steve.
Great. Thank you, Janine. And with that, we are at our last item on the agenda for the evening, and we are 5 minutes ahead of the schedule I had. So, and this will be public speaking time, and we have 30 minutes of public speaking time. I'm going to go ahead and reread the instructions for public speaking. Okay, first there are several different ways to get your comments, questions or comments heard. The first is we will take questions and comments from participants who signed up using the form. Please press the hand icon on the bottom of your screen to be recognized at that time, or type your name and the word speak in all caps into the chat box. When your name is called, please repeat and spell your first and last name before beginning your comment or question. The second way is we will take questions and comments from participants on the language lines. The interpreters will interpret into English. And then finally, if you have called in using your phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand, and Natalia will manually unmute your line and allow you to speak. Please state and spell your first and last name slowly before beginning your comment. So with that being said, Natalia, do you see any individuals in the queue who would like to speak?
Okay, first up, Paulette.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes, you can.
Okay, before you start my time, I just want to bring some awareness to Ryan Zhu, who's been missing since last Friday. His picture is what I'm using as my profile picture right now. And tomorrow is Lunar New Year's Eve, and it would be really wonderful if we can get him home to his mom before the new year starts. If you guys can't read the cell phone number that is on the flyer, Detective Dylan Kangas is the one who's in charge of the missing persons over at the precinct, and his number is 718-236-2502. I will send it over to Natalia so she can share it in the chat. And anyone with information about Ryan, please speak up. It takes a community to help find a child, and this is what I want to use my platform for. That being said, can you start my official time, Natalia? Okay, so my name is Paulette Healy. I am a parent in D20, and I am the newly elected Title I DPAC chair. And I wanted to let all of our Title I schools principals and PTAs know that just as earlier today, the CEC talked about their budget, Title I funds need to be allocated as well before March 1st. So that deadline is creeping up. I've reached out to all of our registered Title I DPAC chairs at our schools, and I've made myself available over the February break to help you create proposed budgets to present at your SLT meetings in February so that you don't send a dollar back to the state. This is money that is supposed to go to parent engagement, and we need as much parent support as we possibly can in these remote learning days, whether you're sending your kid into the building or you're fully remote, the supports need to be there, and we have the money to do so right now. Lastly, I want to just thank Cherie Gibson, give her a big shout out for her great presentation, and to remind everyone, teachers, principals, parents, if you have a child, attending a school in D20, please register to vote, because we've already seen some very, very contentious meetings throughout this whole school year. And for once, we have a chance to really amplify the voices in our district. We keep hearing about the same issues over and over and over again. We keep talking about state funding, but children with disabilities are federally funded by our government, and very little attention has been paid here. Alan Aha's tried so hard to elevate the needs of our students here, and there's been no engagement with the community when it comes to what our students with disabilities need. We keep hearing them elevated in the press about we need to open our schools for our disenfranchised kids and our students with disabilities, but the majority of us are remote. So who are you really helping? With that said, I just appreciate this time, and I appreciate everyone who stayed on this meeting as long as they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. And are there any, do the interpreters, are there any questions on the language lines?
No questions in the Arabic room. Thank you.
Sure. And I
Okay,
don't.
Okay, the one person, Daniel. See if I can find him. Daniel, are you there?
Yes, hi. I'm sorry. I'm just coming back from physical therapy. I'm Daniel Garcia McGuire. Good evening, all. I'm from the Public Advocate's Office, and I'm the Deputy for Education and Opportunity. Here, if I can turn on my camera here. I say, guys. Hello. Good evening. So yeah, definitely wanted to thank you for letting me participate. And two, yeah, you guys doing a bang up job here. Really interesting with the state funding. But yeah, that's a dire issue. Point is, we really want to help with promotion of encouraging parents, families to participate in the CEC elections, both to run and to vote. So I already reached out, and so thanks to the person monitoring the CEC 20 account, is going to put me in touch with Sari. But yeah, wanted to see how we can cross collaborate. And so I'm going to drop my email and my cell phone into the chat, and yeah, take it from there. So thanks all, and yeah, good looking out.
Thank you, Daniel. Natalia, do we have anyone else signed up?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. And that is the last item on the agenda. I just want to, the next meeting is, I want to remind everyone, the next meeting is March 10th, right?
Point of order.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Okay, I'm
Alice.
not lighting up. Hi. I just wondered if we could, just pursuant to what Paulette was talking about, if we could talk about a committee for the IEP. I know that you had sent a resolution around to start discussing. Maybe, we have a little bit of extra time. I don't mean to bore the community, but maybe they want to attend the committee meeting that we would like to hold. Or could we discuss that now? Or I move to discuss that now?
I guess let me go to Steve on that. I mean, this is something that we haven't really established. Everything you're talking about is stuff that's been emailed, but we have to.
So this is point of order, Steve, both Stevens. So
Yeah.
this is open discussion. She could bring up anything.
Okay.
This would really actually be old business that she's bringing up, because didn't we discuss a possible IEP committee? And we talked about Alan maybe doing something. Wasn't that at the last meeting?
It sure was. Thanks.
Sure.
Yes.
I guess I'm just, okay, as long as it can be done in the public speaking slot, which we're officially in, that's.
Yeah, I just thought because we didn't have anyone else signed up, I
Just
would
move
love
to
to hear
discuss
more
it now.
from the public.
Okay, there's nothing formal that needs to be done.
Just a move. He said, Steve said.
I move that we discuss this.
Okay,
Yeah.
I second that motion.
sounds good. Sorry, I'm a stickler. I know.
It's fine.
No, Fine. So maybe we should give Alan the floor. Wants to speak.
Sure. One of the ideas that we had been tossing around for, I think, a while, and one of the reasons why I had, as the IEP representative, had concerns about a formal committee is because parents had asked about an equity committee to envelope IEP issues along with other intersecting issues. So that was part of this. But I wanted to just quickly toss the idea to the council about our next meeting. This is what I've heard from IEP families, in that there's been enough committees and enough town halls, and what they would really like is material results. And so part of that, I think, would be a good idea. This is something that Simeon and I had talked about. Simeon had brought it up recently with Alice and with others, and Rob, and we were thinking about, why don't we just hold people, bring sort of, Simeon, if you want to jump in here for this, for our next meeting in March, and I know, Stephen, you and I had conversed over the phone about this as well, but actually hold sort of like a panel / bring those in charge, given that over the years, IEP families have often been told, we sat in the former superintendent's office, for example, over a year and a half ago, I believe it was, several parents came. I think Vito, Simeon, you were there, and we were told to make a fuss when we were actually speaking to an advocate and hold a press conference, when we were actually speaking to the decision makers in the room. Given we had representative from D75 and we also had the previous superintendent. I think it's time to actually bring people to the next meeting, or perhaps have a special meeting, and actually bring folks who are directly accountable for those results, whether we're talking about compliance rates, to talking about how that data is measured and captured and so forth. Simeon, feel free to chime in on what I think, and Alice, what I think is an excellent idea.
Yeah, I just think this is a good opportunity to bring people from the DOE who can speak to these issues, who have the information, who work on it day in, day out, who know what's going on, and have the opportunity for us to ask them questions and get some answers. I mean, we can have parents come and voice their concerns all the time, but I don't think that's really effective. And a lot of parents aren't comfortable doing that. And it's not clear where that goes. But this is an opportunity to actually bring in some people who are in power and have the opportunity to do something and actually ask them the questions we want to hear the answers to, and let the public hear that as well.
But do we know, I mean, do we have any asks? I mean, I have, you know, my nephew had to go through this process. We wound up going to Severian. We got paid by the state. Yay for us. We got lawyers involved. What I'd wanted to do was maybe bring in an attorney and have him go step by step how an IEP is identified, who identifies them, what the process is, if it gets appeal, if it gets denied, how do they appeal it? When does it go to court? And go like IEPs for beginners. That's something like that. I mean, is there an ask? I mean, last time Alan had said that, well, no, we don't want a particular big school. We don't want this, we don't want that. Do we have a list of asks that we could say, this is what we want? And I think that's the first step.
Just may I speak?
Go ahead.
I'm just curious. I know when we met with the superintendent, the acting interim superintendent, Dr. O'Brien, this had been a suggestion a couple of meetings ago. And it was asked as a collaborative initiative where we would focus solely on IEP and bring in resources. Is this any different than what we had talked about then? And obviously bringing in all of these resources that maybe Steve Weezer could help us bring in, and the district could potentially help us to bring in, and just focus specifically, have this panel. That was what was suggested. I'm not sure if you were there, Alan, maybe that was it. But is this any different than that we had discussed back then?
Are you talking about last week's meeting?
No, it was a couple of meetings ago.
I remember talking about a town hall. I don't remember that, but maybe.
Yeah, no, it was a panel. We said specifically that we could bring in resources where they could answer these questions.
Alan is exactly talking about. So I think.
I'm sorry, Alice. I can't hear you. I don't know if it's me or not.
No, it might be me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's exactly what Alan is talking about. So I think the question is, do we want to do that during?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, but do we want to? Perhaps one idea could be to make a motion to have 2 separate meetings in March and separate our business and our calendar meeting. And I know that we have some other things we need to take care of in our March calendar meeting. So during our business meeting, perhaps we could have some people from the DOE, IEP experts come and answer questions and speak.
Would Alan be like, who's spearheading this?
Well, I think that's exactly what he said. I think
that'd be great. Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100%, absolutely. And I don't know the resources, obviously, Alan, you might be more versed in the resources.
Dr. O'Brien referenced a Ms. Valentine from the DOE Brooklyn South and another name which is escaping me at, like, I guess they are in charge of IEP compliance. And so I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And I know previously when we had asked for a panel on safety, we had a hard time getting everybody together. So
Well,
maybe
we got
we ask the district office
142
to support
cops
us.
when we got it.
Say again, Alice, I'm
We
sorry.
had 142 uniformed officers.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was the
for our
intimidation
panel on
tactic.
safety. So
Love
that
that
was
one.
another issue. We don't
Yeah,
need
well,
that.
yeah, I don't think we'll get the uniformed officers this time.
I hope not.
But yeah, I know how difficult that was. So if we could get the overt support from the district to support this initiative and actively advocate for these, whoever we're
It's just a
requesting.
meeting, right? It's a panel. It's not like an initiative. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
oh, right.
make it sound too lofty here. We just
Right,
want to
right.
have
We
a
won't
panel.
no initiatives.
We'll answer
Right.
questions.
But
Okay,
yeah,
I think it's,
absolutely.
can I just jump in here? Can
If
just
I
jump
may,
in?
oh yeah.
Sorry, Alan. I think the conditions are right for this. I mean, I've said this I've talked to a number of you about this over the past few months, and I'm new here. I'm still 2 months in, but I talk to everyone and I hear everyone saying they want to do something about this. And oftentimes we get caught in these debates about what do we call it, who should be there, whatever. And I really think the time is right to sort of take action on it. And so I think the main question right now needs to be, what format will this be done in? And I think the committee structure makes sense, just to get a targeted committee working on this. The people who sort of want to spearhead it. And
So wait, what is this though? Now I'm confused again. I
it
thought
can
we
be
were just
defined, Alice.
inviting people.
It can be defined by the committee, Alice, but I think we get the idea, as Alan has sort of specified, which is, let's start getting to the heart of the issue. Let's start, moving beyond just the public comments at the monthly meetings and start really focusing on the nuts and bolts. Where is the policy structure sort of falling apart? Where are the holes? Where are the
Right. So
go ahead, Alan.
I would be this is my role here. And part of why this is urgent, and Vito, with all due respect, no more lawyers. IEP families, no more. But I say that with as much respect as possible here. But I just want to make, in terms of what to focus on, one suggestion is that parents can come as we are creating this, right? And anonymously suggest questions that the council members can read aloud. As you might remember, the previous town hall, some parents came and some of them under pseudonyms, or others had other people read their experiences for them with compliance, because they were basically exposing the lack of resources that their schools had in order to meet that 60-day mandate, or there were other more specific inequities that they were speaking to, and I don't think that we responded adequately as a council. So I'll take charge and take the lead in terms of that, and allow parents to be able to be free from any potential. We had a discussion. Some people didn't believe that there was retaliation, but they're in the district, but there is, and so we want to be able to protect anonymity. And also allow parents a space, whereas we would, represent them as we move along.
So next steps, and obviously so we know where we're going. Alan, your next steps, how do you propose to put this together? Like, do you want the committee? Like, what do you want to see specific next steps for you to get to this point where we have this meeting?
So what we'll do is we'll call a committee. We'll call a meeting to sort of move to organize that together. In terms of next steps. I mean, first of all, I'm looking at Paulette Healy, who has a vast information and represents us in a citywide special ed council. I'm looking at Francine Amash, who's here as well, who's got an incredible knowledge. So we already have the expertise amongst parents in the district, and I think that this should be bottom up, grassroots, and it's our job, I think, to take a back seat, because this is a very, very tense issue with families in the district. And for once, we're actually putting disability front and center on the policy agenda, and I appreciate that from the rest of the council.
But we do have to have a committee chair. So are you the committee chair and you'll be directing these members, or? And what date? Like, if we had, obviously we're not going to be here next week, so
you can set
how do we plan?
Alice had an interesting idea for us to separate the business and calendar meeting next month.
Is that enough time, Simeon? Knowing that, and I'm saying this for Alan, because obviously, logistically speaking, I'm just trying to say how how do we get to that step, and what has to be done to get to that step, to have this happen, to have this panel there? Is that enough time to actually make this happen?
So we'll call a meeting right after the break, Adele.
Okay.
Right. So I'll send out an email to the group in terms of finding a date that works. But I want to put parents front and center here. They hear us talk all the time. It's time for us to stop talking. And this is what when I chair meetings, committees, and so forth, I want them to be as democratic and as grassroots as possible. I'm not a very top-down person. So I will do the bottom-down up organizing, but I want to move away from the hierarchies here, and we'll get the date, right? I'll send that out, and we'll also reach out to parents, open it up to the community, use our communications as a means. And I'm the chair. That's me. You know, I welcome Alice to Simeon to co-chair with me on this as well, because they had some really good specific logistical ideas. Or maybe it'd probably be more democratic for a parent to co-chair it with me. That should be Paulette Healy, probably, given her expertise in the city. I think she's the #1 advocate. So that's what I would suggest.
So then could we ask Alan that we have this committee meeting and then we develop a sort of a timeline and proposal for that? And if it involves trying to change the meetings, we'd have to do that. I don't know how you do that in between the meetings, but we can call extra meetings. That's in our bylaws.
Right, all to be determined, I think.
Yeah, or if we decide we need another month or so to get people invited and organize it.
Right.
As well, but we leave it to the committee. We delegate to them to come up with a proposal and a plan.
Right, I think the official thing here tonight is just kick off the committee, which I guess, Alan, there's been sort of a couple committees. I don't know if we need to get into the semantics of it, but there's the old one that predated me, and then there's the proposed one from a couple weeks or last month.
Can I actually speak to that? We
Sure, go
never
ahead,
did any work on any committees before you, Steve. So you don't have to worry about predating you or anything. I mean, I know that we need an official title for the committee.
Yeah.
But in terms of work or carryover or members, I'd say we actually could move now to dissolve all former committees. I don't think that we ever officially did that the last time we had a discussion about committees.
Sure.
And then we could have the two, right? The social media and this IEP or equity or working title committee, TBA. I would make that motion to dissolve all prior committees and to just stand with the two committees we have, social media and this IEP committee.
I second.
Thank you, Vito.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And we can follow the same process we did for social media. There's a Google Sheets document people can sign up for, and then Alan will be in touch with scheduling.
Great. And then does Natalia make the announcement to the community? Because these are open meetings, community.
Yep, that's how we did it with social media. It went
Okay.
out to everyone. Yep,
Okay.
certainly. Yep.
Perfect.
I guess, is there anything else we want to discuss on this topic? Because since we're in sort of open discussion here, I would like to raise one other issue too. Or Alan, are we good on this? Okay. I would like to, I didn't get to talk about it at the business meeting, but this whole idea of doing some kind of parent survey. And again, like I mentioned in my comments, really trying to make some incremental improvements over how past surveys might have done in terms of reaching more of the communities, some of the outlying communities. I've said this to different people at different times, but our summer survey was dominated by Bay Ridge and Dyker Heights families. And I know there's more to this district. And so that's kind of my thinking. And I was kind of thinking about doing something that starts with sort of a design phase over a couple months here. It comes up with some kind of distribution of the survey, maybe in May towards the end of the school year, and then gives us enough time to sort of analyze the results and sort of make a statement and sort of share our findings with the community and for the next council, really, just with sort of an updated view of what parents are thinking about the past year. So is there interest and I guess that would be sort of a official committee structure too. But is there interest in that or any comments on that?
Steve, to that point, I think we've talked about this before. yes, definitely. Somehow we have to get a current temperature of parents and use it. Obviously, the volatility of the past year, but a brief survey maybe, and just as importantly, to hear from parents at our meetings. I totally appreciate what Alan was saying about a fear of that there, potential, negative consequences to speaking up in a meeting. So maybe a survey might be the best way that we could somehow get a current temperature anonymously. So because everything's not fine. And I would love to hear from our language learners. I would love to hear from our IEP parents, specifically about resources, how they're doing. I can't imagine that people are doing well, what they're missing. Yes, I want to focus on what's good about our district, but really we need to know at this point, if we're still in this position, how bad is it out there, for parents. So absolutely, wholeheartedly support you on that one.
I totally agree with what you're talking about. My concern, I think a survey is useful for identifying issues and concerns in the community, but I think we have to be careful about using a survey that's not representative of our community as some sort of tool for advocacy. And getting a sample out there that's going to get a legitimately representative sample and results is very hard. And that's why, polling is very difficult. It costs a lot of money. So we are all amateurs at this. And so we could put out a survey and get, a couple thousand responses, but that's still a fraction of our community and does not necessarily represent them. So I think we can take the qualitative information from it and say, certainly here's some issues that are important to the people who responded and we should work on those. But we have to be very careful we don't claim that is the community's representation unless it is truly statistically and scientifically representative of the community.
Or we could take it as a start point, to your point, Simeon, and know that we need to delve deeper, maybe if there is something there, just to find out if there is more. But I agree with you about the lack of representation. And obviously now I ignore every other operoo that I get. It's just you're constantly being bombarded by these things that you're not necessarily paying attention. So maybe Janine could help. We can do better with marketing. I actually was gotten in touch with, she's a UFT parent liaison for the borough. Her name's Betty Zotar. And it's her job to reach out to schools. And she had contacted me related to the Arts Festival. She had contacted me saying she wants to create a stronger relationship with the parents of District 20. So maybe we can utilize something like that where there's that advocacy that I really agree with you, just because people are technologically savvy, or maybe they're ignoring their technology, we're not necessarily going to get that representation. So it would have to, Steve, to that point, I think it would have to be somehow we have to do a better job of it.
One other suggestion is that we target intermediaries of parents. So if we were to say survey parent coordinators and get a very large response from them and say, we've gotten 95% of the parent coordinators to tell us what they think their parents' issues are. We don't necessarily know if they're biased or not, but at least we would have a flavor across the entire district rather than one half of a district responding.
Steve, it's
Sure.
Janine.
Go ahead, Janine. Yeah.
We're having a monthly meeting tomorrow. What is it that you want me to bring up to the presidents? What am I?
Can I sort of think about some of the stuff and email you? I will email you after sort of get everyone's view on that and sort of next steps.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you though, Janine, for the
You're
offer.
Anytime.
I have a question.
Go
Who
ahead,
is compiling the data?
To be determined. I mean, this is all to be determined. I'm envisioning months of planning on this for all these different issues, and hopefully roll it out, like I said, in May. I imagine there's a lot we'll have to do to really get sort of the content of the survey set up, and then really figure out the best distribution channel, because it's really,
Right.
I know it's complicated, and
So that the results then would be more used for the next council.
I think that's realistic rather than blasting out something really quick. I mean,
Okay, I'm
I
okay
don't,
with
that,
that.
that's just my current thinking.
So the questions then would be more open-ended than they would be, anything specific about, say, I don't know, winter break. I don't know. Something that,
Yeah.
because
Keep-
if by the time the data comes through and gets crunched and gets distributed, it's already 5 months past the survey being.
No, we would do the survey in May and then maybe get it after a couple weeks, and maybe in June, put out our sort of findings.
Oh, okay. So I guess that's my question. Are we hiring someone to do that? Because it's incredibly.
We're not
No, I'm
allowed.
not kidding. I mean, I don't know. Is
I
that
know.
something you do, Steve?
No, Simeon raised a point earlier. I'm going to go back to the SGO, the grants officer, and just double check on the rationale for not being able to pay for services.
Yeah. Thank
But
you.
this is, in all likelihood, this is going to be a volunteer effort. And I actually talked with someone who did one recently. She's 3 parents did one for the needs of special education students in New York City. And they got it's not, like, to Simeon's point, they realize it's not true polling. But all we need to do is sort of make incremental improvements, I think, over what we've done in the past. And I want to really dig into what we did last summer and understand that a little bit better first, and then just see how we can improve incrementally.
And maybe we want to back into it, just to find out what issues we want to know about and then form our questions from there.
Potentially, yes. And I imagine that'll take some doing with our council to figure out what issues and questions we want to have. We can't give them 30 questions to answer. So my biggest hope is that what will come out of this is on sort of the distribution channel side of it, where it's almost as if the content will matter, but it's almost as if that's secondary to just really coming up with a better way of gauging parent opinions on things.
Right. I like Simeon's idea too of the parent. What did you call them? The parent intermediaries.
Parent coordinators.
Right.
Perfect.
Or other intermediaries in the community. But we have to also, since you want to definitely target it towards L parents too, we need the translation, both sides of it, especially the side where the questions come back, especially if they're open-ended.
Yes, I agree. That's going to be a huge part of this, and I'm fully committed to working on that.
Okay.
I realize I see in the chat, Natalia, I apologize to Francine. I think she wanted to speak earlier, and I missed that. Francine, if you're still there, Natalia, can you unmute her and let her ask her question or speak? Is that Natalia?
I've sent the request to unmute.
Okay.
Francine, are you there?
In the meantime, Natalia, if she reaches out to you, we'll come back to her. But I just want to circle or close the loop on the survey. Can we just make is there a motion to establish a survey committee?
Moved.
Moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I will follow up with next steps on that. And we'll take it from there.
I had a separate issue I wanted to raise, which is I sort of kept quiet during the budget discussions because that really seemed to be focused on federal and state funding to the city. But I was talking to one of my liaison schools principals and their PTA executive officers, and there's a lot of concern about being held harmless for enrollment drops. And so if the city gets the funding and it's not supplanted, et cetera, the question then becomes, how are they going to allocate it within the district to the schools? And so there's a lot of concern that, schools that have lost students because of the pandemic, and it's not clear where they are and how many are coming back this fall, et cetera, could lose substantial numbers in their budgets. And obviously they're not going to be able to fix their budgets this year. So a lot of that would get rolled over to a debt that they would have next year, which would be excruciating for many schools. So it's something to pay attention to and keep our eye on as school budgets are being developed this spring and submitted soon.
Definitely. And if it's interesting, right? Like a week ago, and I was on a few calls too, and that was the number one concern. And I don't know if the new stimulus, the 1.9 trillion is, too good to be true. But I wonder if that really changes the conversation, I mean, and it'd be interesting to see what was interesting on the call with Carranza this past weekend. He more or less offered, I think you might have heard him, Simeon, he more or less offered up the CFO for the DOE to any sort of CEC who wanted a fuller picture. And maybe that's something we take him up on, and we reach out and ask if we can have the CFO sort of speak to that, especially in light of the potential passage of the new stimulus bill.
Yeah.
If we could ask that question point blank about the budget and the registrar for October, I think that's really important. I know in one school, it equates to 3 classrooms lost. So if for 32 students per class, some have 13% loss if we believe the numbers, and I know some of those numbers aren't accurate, they're actually higher. If you're losing 3 teachers, you're losing 3 classrooms, and some classes are overcrowded, but you're losing 3 teachers. And where are those? Obviously, where are those? How is that going to be readjusted? If we could have the CFO in and ask that CFO point blank, what happens? Are they held accountable for this budgetary loss? I would love to know that answer.
That's a really good example, because it's tricky, because you don't necessarily lose 30 kids in one grade. It could be spread across different grades. You can't just willy-nilly cut a teacher and assume that that's going to fix your problem, because you're going to still have students across all those grades who need those teachers.
Yeah, and you might, and one of the comments we got was it's the arts teachers as well that go. If you're going to cut teachers, you're going to cut those enrichment classes, or if you want to call them enrichment classes, dare we say. So, and knowing how tightly the city holds principals to their budgets, and those budgets are so inadequate to begin with, and they're literally in the red for the entire year. I would say cynically that they're probably going to hold, principals to this budgetary loss. So I would love to see the CFO there if we can have that.
Let's try that. We'll reach out. I'll reach out.
And I mean, if we find out that that's what they plan to do, that's the kind of thing that I think we should be maybe writing a resolution about and putting our voice behind them not doing nonsense like that. And, the money exists. They just don't want to pull it from, maybe one of the deputy chancellor's budget salaries, or.
I think this would be a
Plenty
really
of
good thing
places.
for all of us to talk to our liaison schools about and get their feedback about what specifically their budgets are looking like and what issues they're going to be trying to grapple with as they think through this spring.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone have any liaison school? Do we have any time? Any liaison school information? Updates?
Not, I could, but I'm not sure I want to.
Yeah, I don't either.
Right now. Yeah.
It seems so long ago, but it was in this past month. I did go to an SLT meeting, and it was a very honest principal, I have to say, and it was very, very direct, and it's very enlightening when you're there. But yeah, I think we're running out of time here.
Yeah. Simeon, are you good on that for now?
Yeah, that's all I had to say.
And I did realize as we're talking about this, there's one item of business that we do have to finish, which we never got to in the budget discussion in the business meeting, because I have to submit a survey by 11 o'clock tonight on the CC, whatever it was. Who sent that out? The Council of CECs or something, on how we would like to spend our remaining surplus. And Inga, you still there?
I am still here, yes.
Do you have those questions? I don't remember if I sent them over to you, or if I don't remember.
You did. I think the first 3 were basically just asking us to prioritize our first 3 choices, and then the rest let me just see if I can pull them up. Yeah, I need a minute here.
Sure. Actually, I might have them. I think Alice.
Screenshot, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna look back in your, okay, I actually have them here on a screenshot from Alice. So
Okay.
all I want to do is just get input from everyone and I'll fill out the survey, but question 1, how would your council like to use the remaining funds in your budget to support your community? Please provide your top 3 options. So Alice, just to start it off, Alice has requested students in temporary housing, technology and hotspots for students, and then direct donations to PTAs. Are there any
Yeah,
other?
I would love to prioritize like the technology for students that still don't have it, literally for us to just get it for them and give it to them. I would be all for that.
Great. So that's 2 for that one.
I'm still in favor of students in temporary housing.
Great. 2 for that one.
I think, their needs, just,
Well, those are probably the kids without devices too. I mean,
right. So I guess you kill
some
birds.
kill, yeah.
And I guess the real question is, we have 3 things here and I can submit 3. So I guess if there's more than 3, let me know, but otherwise it's just a matter of prioritizing these 3, right? So if there's any others that people have on their mind, what would those be?
Are they specifically asking us how we would like to use our money outside of the current structure?
It sounds like that, Simeon. It's to support your community.
Oh, services.
It's pretty open-ended. Yeah.
Those services that we can seem to pay for people to do things for us, like polls.
Survey work, yeah.
I'd prioritize that if we want to have, something that we could actually pay somebody for, but I don't want to.
Wait, is it for the community? Wait, how is it? I mean, I'm just asking, is it outside of our parameters or is it for the community?
You want the poll question, the question?
Yeah, like, I'm just curious, like what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, how would your council like to use the remaining funds in your budget to support your community?
Okay.
It's phrased in a
It's
way
support.
that it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I want to know how we want to donate it.
exactly. It's kind of.
Yeah.
I think Francine.
I said direct donations to PTAs just because I figured that, there are PTAs in this community that might best know how to help their families.
Sure.
Food drives, clothing drives, whatever.
But would we have control over that?
Ability to do that. What?
Well, like where, in other words, who's going to decide where, like, obviously we know our PTAs in need, but would we have?
Well, the President's Council could give us some insight. I think the treasurer sits on our council and, maybe there are probably PTAs out in our district that have $0 in their.
No, I don't doubt that. I'm just wondering if by saying this, we get a say in that distribution, or does it go into that?
I don't know
fund
if that would
the
work.
last
That's
thing went to?
number 3 on my list. So if it gets kicked off, it's not a big deal.
Thank you, Alice.
You got it, Janine, anytime. Thank you for all you do. You're the best.
I mean, I don't know that we have much money to go very far, but I certainly think summer services for kids would be very valuable. Kids who are behind, kids who missed out, kids who couldn't access things. So to be able to keep some schools open and keep some remote learning going during the summer for kids would be great.
What would be, can you think of like one example, Simeon, just so I can, if I needed to provide that? Or just general
Summer school of some sort, but targeted.
Okay, as opposed to like, isn't there also like a youth employment program that you hear about?
Yeah, that's a city program to the mayor's office, I think.
Totally different. Okay.
Yeah, and he destroyed that.
All right.
I mean, I personally think the schools should probably stay open all summer. I mean, that they should extend the school year and keep educating because kids are just behind.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Agreed.
So that's a 4th one we have on the list now. Any other ideas, or should we just try to get the final 3 down here? Because there's a couple more questions on the survey too, so I want to get through all those. And
let's
crank
them.
So of the 4 we have, does anyone, is there sort of a group decision on which one gets, which 3 I should prioritize?
I think STH and the devices, no?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm for that.
Okay. And then so between PTA donations and summer school, do we want to?
mean, I lean towards PTA because I think it's more doable. I mean, I don't know how we're going to spend our money on actual like enrichment programs or summer school
Right.
programs. I don't know how we would do that. And I think we would be able to like give our money to Janine. Somehow there's probably more infrastructure for that sort of
If they
just
let
kind of
us.
practical. Yeah. But I love the summer school idea too.
I'm concerned how they're going to take, like, I remember when we gave the money last time, we asked, how is it distributed? And they didn't say specifically for our community last time, but it did go into a pool, and we really don't know how this money is going to be distributed to our community.
But
So
we
I
do
would love to know what they're talking about.
if we don't spend it.
Say, Alice?
I know, I agree with you, but
Remember, guys, this is just an opinion survey.
Yeah, I
and
know.
we-
Onward, go
We're
for
a
it.
long way. All right, so we'll put PTA donations for third, and I'll answer it that way. Okay.
Okay.
And what was, Inga, did you want to say something?
No, I just said I agree. Okay.
Okay. And then the next question, is your council interested in reallocating unused funds from your budget to the superintendent's budget if approved by the DOE? How much?
Well, I don't even know what that means.
So vague.
Yeah, my reflex is no, because I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, no.
no. I'm glad we all agree on that.
All right. So you're saying no, is what I
No.
hear. We need a roll call vote or? All right, I got it. Number 3, please share how your council, these are obvious. The council last year, we used our budget for students and temporary housing payment. Is that right?
Yes.
So that's easy to answer. And then this last one is really open-ended. Please share any challenges your council is currently experiencing with the budget, e.g. reimbursements, payments, etc.
Services.
Yeah,
For services. Yeah.
I like that. Perfect.
Yeah, or maybe just using it to help our community effectively during the pandemic. I mean, frankly.
Specifically, every time we try to get somebody to do something for us, they tell us that we can't. We have to do it ourselves, which kind of limits us.
Yeah.
Or
Plus
they
using
tell
DOE
Natalia-
vendors, which is atrocious.
Yeah, and then they tell Natalia to go searching through a 300-page DOE vendor list that
Yeah.
isn't even categorized by type of vendor.
Yeah, the vendors are just, that's a nightmare. That's, why don't you just, that's terrible.
And if you send an email asking for, well, what vendor does this? No one responds.
But they do have vendor codes, right? Like certain codes link to certain types of businesses. So no, there's like a restaurant code. I think it varies by borough, but there is some sort of, you should maybe ask if there has to be a method to the madness, like internally, that might help you
Alice,
navigate it.
If you figure it out and you find out if there's
I
another
remember there being
vendor,
a restaurant code by borough because I was searching for vendors for restaurants and I was like, and it was like BA and it made no sense, but it meant restaurants in Bay Ridge. It was like,
That's the.
it was ridiculous, but there was something there.
That's
Anyway, I digress.
the kind of thing I hope I never have to expend brain cells on, but do we, are we good? So we're good on the survey, so I'll submit that.
Great.
just make sure they understand what services mean. I'd like them to know wholeheartedly that they are just figuring out another way to make CECs less effective.
I get the gist of what we're doing. I'll type it up. I do see Francine is back. So Francine, you can close out the meeting.
I'm sorry about that. And it feels a little bit after the fact now. I just wanted to circle back to that whole issue of the IEP committee. And I just wanted to say out loud, both to echo what Paulette said, and then also to say, Alan, I appreciate that you're going to take this sort of, even though I don't like the word bottom, but I understand what you mean by bottom up sort of grassroots approach, because I just want to say that before you spend time thinking about bringing representatives from the DOE in to talk to us about process and policy, really, I would like to see a committee that really addresses the systemic issues in this district, that's specific to this district, right? Which is the sort of culture of denial and culture of retribution. And if you bring in people from the DOE just to talk to us about process, you risk further marginalizing us. So I appreciate, Alan, that you mentioned a commitment to whether it's me or Paulette or whoever else you think has can be helpful here, but to put parents who are on the committee who can talk about the actual experiences and not parents who've had successful experiences. Okay, there are a lot of us, more of us that have had unsuccessful experiences. And those are the holes. Somebody said something about how we have to know where to fill in the holes. The only way you're going to know how to fill in the holes is if you ask us. And I just would say that we have shown up at a lot of meetings and we have spoken to this a lot, like a lot. And it is a little confusing for me to figure out like what the priorities of the CEC are. I was confused not to see anything about Black Lives Matter in schools. I mean, there's a lot that sort of makes us feel like we're not really represented. So I hope that when you put this committee together, that culture of this CEC changes. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francine.
Is there anyone else in the waiting room, or if she was it? So we give the whole. Natalia.
Natalia, we're good?
No, she's it. No one else.
Great.
Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
After we remind people when the next one is.
Oh, right. I forgot to do that.
And
Sorry.
Happy New Year to all of our Chinese families and students.
The next meeting, yeah, that's right. I already did that because
Oh, you-
Natalia held up her 10 fingers. The next meeting is March 10th.
March 10th, that's right.
Right? So please join us for our next scheduled business and calendar meeting, March 10th, but look for other announcements coming on various committee meetings in the interim. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Night, Natalia.
And thank you to our translators.
Thank you. Have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay.